Chapter 1937. In the Qinghu Mountain Range. Boom! The golden-armored thunder god was struck by the milky white energy, and its huge body was instantly blasted into countless lightning bolts. Then, countless lightning bolts enveloped the entire mountain range like a thunderstorm, quickly descending and merging into the ground of the mountain range. The countless trees and exotic plants that were destroyed by the terrifying impact of the collision between the fierce beast Qi and the purple sword Qi were reborn. Instantly, the entire Qinghu mountain range was brimming with vitality. The only regrettable thing was that even though the thunderstorm contained a huge amount of life essence, it was unable to revive the dead strange beast. After all, the death of exotic beasts involved their souls. It wasn't a simple life essence that could bring them back to life. Ignoring the long-armed ape in the air and the half-tribulation supreme being experts in the void at the edge of the mountain range, the ferocious beast Denglong glanced at Yu Haoran with a gaze full of curiosity. Then, it directly sank into the green lake that had recovered. Thaling, it seems like the Qinghu mountain range can completely replace the Blood Mist mountain range and officially become one of the 10 great forbidden lands in the Tianxian continent. Looking at the fierce beast Qi that had sunk back into the Qinghu mountain range, Yu Haoran sighed with a complicated expression as he recalled how the fierce beast Qi could easily resist the power of the heavenly way. That's right. Thaling nodded in agreement with Yu Haoran's sigh. A trace of worry flashed across his eyes. However, when he thought about how Yu Haoran would control the prince's mansion to return to the southern region 100 Qi Gate, the worry in his eyes was instantly replaced by relief. After the golden-armored thunder god was completely killed by the fierce beast Qi, it meant that the long-armed ape had successfully passed the god's tribulation lightning punishment. Therefore, after receiving Yu Haoran's reassuring gaze, the long-armed ape immediately sat down cross-legged and waited for the reward of the god's tribulation lightning punishment. At the same time, the dozens of experts in the void at the edge of the mountain range rushed towards the long-armed ape, who was sitting cross-legged in mid-air. Do you want to die? Yu Haoran directly activated the law of flash and speed and appeared in front of the long-armed ape. His expression was as cold as ice as he threatened. At the same time, Yusiki, Qingfeng, and the rest hurriedly stood behind Yu Haoran. Their expressions were extremely solemn, and their eyes were filled with vigilance as they looked at the dozens of half-tribulation supreme beings who were rushing towards them. Yu Haoran, if you step aside right now, all the grudges between us can be written off, and we can even form an alliance that advances and retreats together. After that, we can work together to fight for the slim chance in the immeasurable calamity, and even divide the new world created by the Destiny's Child in the future. A third tribulation supreme being expert from world cleansing suggested with a strange smile in his eyes. Or rather, it could be said that he was tempting them. A mere third tribulation supreme ant, what qualifications do you have to discuss the matter of an alliance with this prince consort? Why would this prince consort care about the grudges between your pure world organization? Yu Haoran was prepared to hand over control of his body at any time. His eyes revealed a trace of disdain and mockery. Despicable brat, you're courting death. After hearing Yu Haoran's mockery, the third tribulation supreme being expert immediately scolded angrily. Then, he signaled to his 4 companions from world cleansing. Subsequently, the 5 third tribulation supreme being experts each took out a divine realm formation flag and quickly rushed towards Yu Haoran. You guys are to temporarily abide by the law for the senior. After turning his head to instruct Qingfeng and Yusiki, Yu Haoran took the initiative to meet them. At the same time, he also took the opportunity to hand over control of his body to Thaling. Pentaquaking 5 elements formation. Thaling allowed the 5 third tribulation supreme being experts from world cleansing to envelop him with the formation. With just a glance, he recognized the origin of the formation that the other party had set up. Second doppelganger, The pentaquaking 5 elements formation is a formation that integrates both attack and defense. However, the biggest difference between it and other formations is that the pentaquaking 5 elements formation does not have a single formation point. The 5 experts holding the formation flags are all the cornerstones of the formation. After recognizing the origin of the formation that the 5 Third Tribulation Supreme Being experts had set up, Thowling directly summoned his second doppelganger, who was preparing to break through the formation deity realm. While explaining the principle of the pentaquaking 5 elements formation in detail, he personally taught his second doppelganger how to break the formation. The way to break the pentaquaking 5 elements formation is very simple. That is, rely on your own strength to attack the 5 cornerstones of the formation at the same time, so that the formation cannot concentrate all its power on one point. Boom! As Thowling stretched out his 5 fingers, 5 rays of light purple energy shot out and accurately hit the 5 Third Tribulation Supreme Being experts who were moving quickly. The power of vibration that the pentaquaking 5 elements formation had condensed stopped less than 1 centimeter away from Thowling. Then, the terrifying power of vibration suddenly turned around and directly counterattacked the 5 Third Tribulation Supreme Being experts who had set up the formation and had already been seriously injured. Withdraw the formation at once. When the strongest Third Tribulation Supreme Being expert saw that the power of vibration condensed by the formation had begun to counterattack, his expression changed and he shouted loudly to his 4 companions. But compared to the extreme speed of the counterattack of the power of vibration, the speed at which they withdrew the formation was much slower. In the end, the bodies and souls of the 5 Third Tribulation Supreme Being experts were completely shattered by the power of vibration. This was also the first time that the World Purification Organization, which had been passed down for countless years, had suffered such a heavy loss. After all, 5 Third Tribulation Supreme Being experts were almost the strongest existing strength of a top inheritance family or top sect. Set up the formation. Just as the 5 Third Tribulation Supreme Being experts of the World Purification Organization died tragically in the pentaquaking 5 elements formation that they had set up, the 18 Half-Tribulation Supreme Being experts from the Blue Dragon Clan, the White Tiger Clan, and the Vermilion Bird Clan were not afraid at all. After the peak Third Tribulation Supreme Being experts from the Blue Dragon Clan called out to the other 17 companions, they quickly scattered around Thowling. Then, they each took out a formation flag at the peak of the God Realm and began to set up the 4 Divine Beasts formation around Thowling, which the Guardian clans relied on for survival. You Howren, although you have obtained the formation flags of the 4 Divine Beasts formation from the 4 Symbols sect and have personally set up the 4 Divine Beasts formation, the 4 Symbols sect's formation pales in comparison to the Guardian clans that truly created this kind of formation. It's not even worth mentioning. While watching the 18 Half-Tribulation Supreme Being experts of the Guardian clans set up the formation, Thowling explained in detail to Yu Howren and his second clone the core principles of the 4 Divine Beasts formation, as well as its peak strength. In ancient times, the Blue Dragon, the White Tiger, the Vermilion Bird, and the Black Tortoise, who had just advanced to the Supreme Being realm, once used the 4 Divine Beasts formation to trap and kill the Golden Dragon, who was at the peak of the 7th grade Supreme Being realm. It also rendered the Dragon God King, who was at the peak of the 9th grade Supreme Being realm, unable to do anything to them. Chapter 1938. In the Qinghu Mountain Range. It's a pity that without the participation of the Black Tortoise clan, who is proficient in formations, the so-called 4 Divine Beasts formation that has reached the sovereign level is only an incomplete formation. Along with Thowling's disdainful and mocking voice, dozens of light purple energy successively struck the fatal flaw of the formation's defense. This caused the 4 Divine Beasts formation, which had been painstakingly arranged, to fall apart in an instant. It also caused the 18 Half-Tribulation Supremes of the Guardian family to suffer the backlash of the formation's collapse. their bodies and souls instantly suffered unimaginable damage. Siki, I'll leave these people to you. You must kill them all. Thaling instructed Yusiki as he pointed at the Guardian family's experts, whose auras had all fallen to the first Tribulation Supreme realm. He knew that the person who had ordered him to act was none other than Supreme Violet Spirit, the one who had accompanied and protected his younger brother. At the same time, she had unlocked the memories of the second-generation Supreme Exalt, allowing her to truly understand the origins and strength of Supreme Violet Spirit. Therefore, Yusiki nodded respectfully in response, then took out the Celestial Ending Sword and charged over. Thaling, who believed that Yusiki would be able to deal with the experts from the Guardian families, turned his gaze towards the remaining experts and asked with a hint of provocation in his eyes. Who's next? After the most powerful experts from the top forces exchanged glances, a third Tribulation Supreme being from the Rogue Cultivators Alliance walked out with his 8 companions. Then, the strongest half-Tribulation Supreme expert took out a magic weapon that was yellow in color and shaped like an umbrella from the independent space he created. Connate Spirit Treasure, Chaos Soul Stabilizing Umbrella. After seeing the magic tool that the other party had taken out, Thaling's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise as he explained the origin of the magic tool. Yu Haoran, the Primordial Soul Stabilizing Umbrella, is one of the few primordial spiritual treasures that can trap Supremes. It's also one of the few primordial spiritual treasures I can use to kill artifact spirit. Thaling, can you take back the Primordial Soul Stabilizing Umbrella? Yu Haoran asked expectantly. No problem. Thaling smiled and nodded, knowing that Yu Haoran wanted to seize the Chaos Soul Stabilizing Umbrella. Rumor has it that the Emperor's son-in-law not only possesses unparalleled cultivation talent and potential, but also has the ability to know everything. Seeing Yu Haoran recognize the true origin of the umbrella-shaped magic tool in his hand at a glance, the strongest person from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance praised with a trace of surprise in his eyes. It seems that the rumors are true. You flatter me. Thaling responded indifferently. The 5 fingers of his right hand that were hidden in his sleeves began to quietly condense a seal. He then used the space-time energy of the original victor to quietly integrate the seal into the Chaos Soul Stabilizing Umbrella. Prince Consort, the Tongbi Divine Ape's temperament is unreasonable and tyrannical, and its actions are lawless. In the ancient era, it had committed crimes that were as great as the heavens. If we allow the Tongbi Divine Ape to successfully revert to its ancestry, I'm afraid it will bring an unimaginable disaster to the Tianxian continent. The strongest rogue cultivator holding the Chaos Soul Stabilizing Umbrella did not make a move immediately. Instead, he patiently explained the facts and reasons, hoping that Yu Haoran would not continue to protect him, or even take the initiative to kill the Tongbi Divine Ape. Just do it. Thaling could not be bothered to continue listening to the other party's nonsense. He impatiently interrupted the other party, and then ordered with an indifferent expression. Since the Emperor's son-in-law is so stubborn, then don't blame me, Renyuzhen, for being merciless. Seeing that his earnest persuasion had not only failed to persuade Yu Haoran to turn over a new leaf, but also caused the other party to impatiently urge him, the strongest rogue cultivator immediately felt extremely annoyed. After a cold threat, he directly threw out the Chaos Soul Stabilizing Umbrella in his hand. Then, he directly joined forces with the 8 companions behind him and simultaneously released their divine power and soul power to quickly open the surface of the Chaos Soul Stabilizing Umbrella. At the same time, they also completely activated the power of the innate spiritual treasure. Looking up at the fully opened Chaos Soul Stabilizing Umbrella, Thaling did not make a move to attack, nor did he dodge. He allowed the special energy of the Chaos Soul Stabilizing Umbrella to trap him. Do it. Seeing that the Chaos Soul Stabilizing Umbrella had successfully trapped Yu Haoran, a look of surprise flashed across Renyuzhen's eyes, and he immediately ordered the 8 companions behind him. When the 9 half-tribulation Supreme Being experts of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance were preparing to combine their strongest attack, Thowling, who had not made a move until now, revealed a strange smile on his face. He stretched out his hand and pointed at the Chaos Soul stabilizing umbrella above his head. The Chaos Soul stabilizing umbrella, which had been aimed at Thowling, suddenly turned its mouth to aim at Renyusion and the other 8 people. Moreover, the special energy used to trap and defend also instantly enveloped Renyusion and the other 8 people. What's going on? Seeing that the primordial spiritual treasure, the Chaos Soul stabilizing umbrella, which was supposed to be used against Yuhauran, had suddenly turned its spearhead against him, Renyusion cried out in disbelief. Unfortunately, the experts of the top forces who wanted to answer him did not know what was going on. Even if Thowling knew what was going on, he would not be so kind as to tell him. Therefore, when the umbrella was closed again, the 9 people, who were struggling in disbelief, were sucked back into the umbrella. Then, the Chaos Soul stabilizing umbrella slowly fell into Thowling's hands. Sizzle! Seeing that Yuhauran could easily seize control of the primordial spiritual treasure, the Chaos Soul stabilizing umbrella, the remaining 60 half-tribulation Supreme Being experts could not help but gasp. At the same time, a hint of fear flashed across their eyes. In particular, the experts of the Primordial Deity Clan, the Ancient Underworld Clan, and the 3 families of inheritance, who were also preparing to use primordial spiritual treasures to deal with Yuhauran, showed hesitation in their eyes. They were considering whether to immediately give up the plan to kill the long-armed ape and temporarily escape from Qinghu Mountain Range. Who's next to attack? After returning the Chaos Soul stabilizing umbrella to Yuhauran's hands in the Sea of Consciousness space and imparting the secret method of refining primordial spiritual treasures to him, Thowling continued to ask indifferently. In the face of Yuhauran's blatant provocation, most of the experts of the top forces showed hesitation in their eyes. Only the 12 divine beasts from the Primordial Demon Clan rushed toward Yuhauran with strong murderous intent in their eyes. At the same time, they each took out a formation flag, which was engraved with the portraits of the 12 strongest ancestors of sorcery. Yuhauran, I'm afraid that we will need to join forces to easily break the 12 divine beings killing formation set up by the Primordial Demon Clan. As the 12 divine beasts swallowed the formation flags in his hands, their bodies continued to grow bigger and emitted endless black smoke. Thowling's face suddenly revealed a strange smile. As someone who had also reached the peak of the Supreme Being realm in the field of formations, Thowling could count the number of formations that could make him feel fearful and helpless, whether it was from the primordial age, the Middle Age, or the recent age. Chapter 1939. In the Qinghu Mountain Range. No problem. In the memory inheritance of the 12 strongest ancestral sorcerers from ancient times, there was not only detailed information about the 12 divine beings slaughtering formation, but also the method to break the formation. Therefore, after hearing Thowling's suggestion, Yuhauran nodded in reply and regained control of his body. Then, he immediately restored the body of the ancient ancestral sorcerer and directly activated the purest ancestral sorcerer bloodline in his body. With the help of the ancestral sorcerer's body and bloodline, he directly looked for the weakness of the formation and let Thowling attack it personally. However, at the moment when the bloodline of the ancestral sorcerer was activated, the black smoke condensed by the 12 divine beings slaughtering formation rushed over like a hungry wolf. It ignored the strong defense formed by the ancestral sorcerer's body and entered his body through the countless pores of his body. Then, it quickly merged with the blood flowing in his veins. This is... Seeing that the strong defense formed by the ancestral sorcerer's body could not resist the invasion of the black smoke that was quickly gathering, Yuhauran instinctively wanted to ask Thowling for help. Then, he unexpectedly found that the black smoke that merged with his blood did not cause him any harm. Instead, it helped to improve the level and strength of his body by quickly purifying the impurities in his blood. Yu Haoran, the 12 divine beings' slaughtering formation, was set up with the blood essence of the ancient ancestral sorcerer. The black smoke condensed in the formation is actually the essence of the ancestral sorcerer's blood essence. Thinking of this, the blood essence of the ancestral sorcerer should have been specially collected and stored by the demon tribe in ancient times. Knowing the process of the changes in Yu Haoran's body and the reason why he was surprised, Thowling explained with a smile. For other creatures, the attack of the black smoke is fatal, but for you, the only pure ancestral sorcerer left in the world, the black smoke is a panacea to improve the body of the ancestral sorcerer. After hearing Thowling's reminder, Yu Haoran, who was completely relieved, carefully felt the improvement of his body after the black smoke purified his bloodline. Then, a look of wild joy appeared in his eyes. This was because he found that his body, which had reached the peak of the 8th level of the martial god realm, had a vague trend of breaking through the 9th level of the martial god realm. Moreover, the breakthrough of the physical body under such circumstances would not affect the loosening of the overall cultivation base at all, nor would it attract the descent of the god's tribulation thunder. Simply put, the black smoke condensed by the 12 capital heaven divine wraith formation could further increase his potential and increase his accumulation. Without any hesitation, Yu Haoran bent his knees and sat down. He then completely removed the defense of the ancestral magus body, allowing the black smoke to surge into his body like a tide. At the same time, he took out a few pills to improve his body. Then, he assisted the black smoke in breaking through to the 9th grade martial god realm to increase his potential. Due to the black smoke condensed by the 12 divine fiends formation, it possessed the power to directly injure Supreme Being experts. Therefore, although the dozens of half-tribulation supremes outside the formation wanted to know the situation inside the black smoke, none of them dared to use their divine sense to spy on it. At this moment, they could only look at the black smoke with anticipation. At this moment, they could not help but pray in their hearts that the black smoke could severely injure or even kill Yu Haoran directly. However, Lu Yuan, Wu Jingjun, and Pallas, who were guarding in front of the long-armed ape, did not intend to help. Instead, they stopped Qing Feng, who was preparing to attack the mythical beast that had merged with the formation flag. Senior brother Qing Feng, Yu Shixiang has the help of a benefactor. He will not be in any danger. You and I just need to wait patiently. This was the explanation that Wu Jingjun gave to Qing Feng through divine sense when he was angrily questioned by Qing Feng. Although he did not know who the benefactor that Wu Jingjun mentioned was, Qing Feng guessed that this benefactor must have the cultivation of a supreme master when he thought about how Yu Haoran could use a special secret method to directly reach the peak of the second tribulation Supreme Being realm and the true Supreme Being realm. Therefore, he was completely at ease and continued to protect the long-armed ape. Boom! Just as everyone present was paying attention to the black smoke condensed by the 12 divine beings' ominous formation, after nearly 5 minutes of silence, the black clouds above the long-armed ape's head suddenly began to rumble with endless thunderous roars. Accompanied by the deafening roar of thunder, countless hair-like golden lightning bolts struck down like a torrential downpour. This is the 10th thunder punishment of the divine tribulation. It is also the legendary spiritual tribulation. Seeing the countless golden thunderbolts bombarding down like a heavy rainstorm, a memory suddenly emerged in Pallas's bloodline inheritance. He could not help but cry out involuntarily. Lu Yuan, quickly informed the others to stay away from the range of the thunder punishment. Just as Lu Yuan was shocked by the sudden thunder punishment, the Xianyuan sword's device spirit, who also understood the power of the spiritual tribulation, reacted in time and hurriedly reminded him. Senior brother Qing Feng, junior brother Wu, brother Qi, quickly leave here. After being reminded by the Xianyuan sword's device spirit, Lu Yuan, who quickly recovered from the shock, immediately shouted at Qing Feng and the others. Without any hesitation, Qing Feng, Wu Jingjun, and Pallas immediately rushed toward the black smoke condensed by the 12 divine beings' ominous formation. Fortunately, the long-armed ape had followed Yu Haoran's instructions in advance, and had been using the remaining pure thunderbolt energy and elixirs in his body to increase his cultivation and strength. Therefore, in the face of the countless thunderbolts bombarding down like a heavy rainstorm, he stood up without the slightest bit of panic. He quickly transformed into a towering ape that was more than 2,000 meters tall. Then, relying on his strong physical body and the bloodline-gifted martial technique, he used all his strength to resist the bombardment of the 10th thunder punishment. Fortunately, in order not to affect the long-armed ape's receiving of the thunder punishment, Yu Haoran chose a position close to the edge of the mountain range to avoid the attack of the 10th thunder punishment. Yu Haoran immediately used the Great Devouring technique to speed up the absorption of the black smoke. Because the long-armed ape's divine tribulation has changed, I'm afraid I'll need your help personally. Although the black smoke condensed by the 12 divine beings' ominous formation had the power to harm a primordial expert, Thaling had at least a dozen secret techniques that could extend his divine thought. Therefore, when he heard the sudden thunder from outside the black smoke, he hurriedly used the spacetime energy to wrap it up and used his divine thought to check on the long-armed ape's situation. Then, he saw the 10th thunder punishment, which was the legendary spiritual tribulation. The spiritual tribulation, also known as the ancestral tribulation, was a tribulation that targeted innate spiritual beings when they evolved into divine beasts. Originally, Thaling thought that the legendary spiritual tribulation would not appear at all. Even if it did appear, it should be something that defied the natural order, like the empty spirit mouse and the doomed spirit mouse. Chapter 1940. In the Qing mountain range, Yu Haoran used the black smoke condensed by the 12 divine beings' killing formation to avoid loosening his cultivation and attracting the divine tribulation thunder punishment. His body successfully advanced to the early 9th level of the martial god realm and continued to strive for a higher realm. However, at this moment, he suddenly heard Thaling mention that the divine tribulation thunder punishment of the long-armed ape had encountered a change. The memory inheritance of the Destiny Stone tablet immediately reminded him of the legendary spiritual tribulation. According to the records of the Destiny Stone tablet, although the spiritual tribulation thunder punishment had many forms, they all had one thing in common, which was that the thunder punishment lasted for a long time and affected a wide area. More importantly, the spiritual tribulation was the only divine tribulation that was beyond the control of the rules of heaven. It was also the only thunder punishment that others could interfere with. Thus, after hearing the Tower Spirit's warning, Yu Haoran was extremely shocked. He immediately used the devouring technique with all his might, devouring the black smoke condensed by the formation like a whirlwind. This not only allowed his body to advance to the middle and high 9th level of the martial god realm quickly, but also caused the essence blood of the ancestors of the sorcerer's essence blood in the hands of the 12 half-tribulation supremes of the ancient demon clan to disappear quickly. Just as all of the ancestral witch's blood essence was completely consumed, the formation that continued to condense the black smoke was no longer able to allow Yu Haoran's figure to appear in front of everyone. At the same time, the 12 half-tribulation supreme being experts of the demon clan turned pale with fright. Thaling quickly completed the exchange of control of the body. After regaining control of the body, he immediately used the strength of the supreme realm to easily kill the divine souls of the 12 divine beasts of the demon clan. He also took the formation flags that were used to set up the 12 divine beings' killing formation, as well as the bodies of the 12 divine beasts. After that, Yu Haoran immediately took control of the body and turned to look at the golden lightning that was bombarding him like a rainstorm. Looking at the thunder punishment in front of him, which was exactly the same as what was recorded in the Destiny Stone tablet, he quickly used his divine thought to inform Yusiki, Qing Feng, and the others to continue to retreat. After that, he took a deep breath and directly rushed into the thunderstorm that filled the sky. Although the thunderstorm-like golden yellow lightning was only as thick as a strand of hair, the might of each golden yellow lightning had reached peak rank 9 martial emperor. Not to mention the divine spirit experts in the martial god realm, even a real supreme being would not be able to withstand the continuous attacks of countless experts at the peak of level 9 of Emperor Wu. Not to mention the long-armed ape, who was only an early 4th grade martial god. Therefore, Yu Haoran, who had quickly rushed into the sky full of thunderbolts, relied on the strong defense of the ancestral wizard's body to withstand the countless golden thunderbolts. At the same time, he quickly searched for the long-armed ape. In the end, at the center of the lightning tribulation, he saw the long-armed ape whose height was over 5,000 meters. Its aura had reached the peak 5th grade martial god realm. Little friend, why did you barge into my god's tribulation? Sensing the aura of a living being approaching, the long-armed ape suddenly repelled a large amount of golden thunderbolts. At the same time, he turned his head to look with a vigilant expression. Then, he saw Yu Haoran, who maintained the ancestral wizard's body. Senior, if you want to pass through the spiritual tribulation that will allow you to completely revert to your ancestors, you can't just rely on repelling the thunderbolts. Seeing that the long-armed ape did not suffer any damage from the spiritual tribulation, Yu Haoran secretly let out a sigh of relief. At the same time, he quickly used his divine thought to condense the complete version of the devouring technique. Then, he used the power of the law of space to teleport the condensed divine thought into the long-armed ape's forehead. He also told him in detail about the origin and effect of the devouring technique. After hearing that the devouring technique could devour anything and everything, a trace of ecstasy flashed in the long-armed ape's eyes. Then, he immediately began to cultivate the devouring technique. With the help of the golden thunderbolts that filled the sky, he tested and improved the power of the devouring technique. Seeing that the long-armed ape had successfully grasped the essence of the devouring technique in less than a minute, Yu Haoran was completely relieved. At the same time, he directly distanced himself from the center of the spiritual tribulation. The spiritual tribulation was a test and tribulation for the innate lifeforms to completely transform their physique and soul. In the rainstorm-like golden thunderbolts, not only did they contain pure energy that was specially used to improve the grade of the physical body, they also had the effect of helping to improve the comprehension of the state of mind and the grade of the soul power. Therefore, Yu Haoran relied on the strong defense of the ancestral wizard's body to withstand the attack of the golden thunderbolts. At the same time, he also used the devouring technique to devour a large amount of golden energy. With the help of the pure thunderbolt energy contained in the golden thunderbolts, he continued to improve the grade of his physical body. At the same time, he began to consciously improve the realm of his state of mind and soul power. He used it to strengthen his accumulation and lay a good foundation for breaking through to the complete 10th grade martial god realm in the future. Even the 12 divine beings' ominous formation set up by the ancient demon clan was unable to do anything to Yu Haoran. This caused the over 60 half-tribulation supremes present to reveal a look of fear in their eyes. Especially when they saw that Yu Haoran actually dared to interfere with the long-armed ape's spiritual tribulation lightning punishment, the fear in their eyes was replaced by terror. The strongest experts of the few top forces looked at each other and discovered that each of them had the intention of retreating in their eyes. However, they had already severely offended Yu Haoran and the long-armed ape. Before seeing the final result of the spiritual tribulation lightning punishment, none of the half-tribulation supremes present would willingly leave. Therefore, as they prepared to retreat at any time, their eyes were filled with anticipation as they looked at the thunderstorm that filled the sky. They prayed that Yu Haoran and the long-armed ape would finally die in the spiritual tribulation lightning punishment. However, what made them feel incomparably disappointed was that the spiritual tribulation lightning punishment that had lasted for nearly 40 minutes did not disappear. Instead, from the center of the spiritual tribulation lightning punishment, two terrifying auras that were like that of ferocious beasts were emitted. Let's go! The strongest experts of the few inherited clans, whose fear had finally overcome their wishful thinking, turned their heads to give orders to their clansmen behind them. Immediately, they tore open the void and left the Qinghu mountain range. Let's go! After another 10 minutes, seeing that the spiritual tribulation lightning punishment did not show any signs of dissipating and that the aura in the center of the spiritual tribulation lightning punishment was getting stronger, the strongest experts from the Xiandao school and the Shangguan clan finally cautiously led their clansmen away from the Qinghu mountain range. At this moment, in the void above the Qinghu mountain range, there were only 9 half-tribulation supremes from the ancient God clan and 5 half-tribulation supremes from the ancient Nether clan left. Join forces. The strongest expert of the ancient God clan turned his head to look at the strongest expert of the Nether clan with a gloomy expression. His eyes were filled with desire as he asked, "Join forces?" Without any hesitation, the strongest expert of the ancient Nether clan immediately nodded his head in agreement. The map of the universe, the number 1 binding Dharma artifact among the innate spiritual treasures. Chapter 1941. Qinghu Mountain Range. Seeing the primordial God clan's strongest expert take out the top innate spiritual treasure, the map of the universe, a strange look flashed in the eyes of the primordial underworld clan's strongest expert. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. He knew that the other party wanted to use the map of the universe's powerful binding ability to take the initiative after they joined forces. However, how could the proud primordial underworld clan's strongest expert be willing to submit to someone else's leadership and command? Therefore, after the primordial underworld clan's strongest expert put away the strange look in his eyes, a confident smile appeared on his face as he took out a dazzling golden magic tool. It was shaped like a Big Dipper. The primordial spiritual treasure with the strongest spirit attack, the primordial golden dipper. When he saw the primordial underworld clan's strongest expert take out the primordial underworld clan's strongest expert, his expression suddenly changed as he cried out involuntarily, "That's right!" The primordial underworld clan's strongest expert said with a chuckle as he nodded to confirm. "Elder Shen, who will be the one giving the orders next?" Ha! Elder Shen laughed awkwardly in the face of the primordial underworld clan's strongest expert's questioning. He pointed at the map of the universe in his hand and explained, "Elder Xinjing, the map of the universe is for trapping, while the primordial golden dipper is for killing. It's a combination of one attacking and one defending. I don't think we need anyone to give the orders." Whether it was the primordial Yao clan or the primordial God clan and the primordial underworld clan, although they weren't absolute enemies, they were always on guard against each other. Even if Elder Shen was willing to listen to orders, Xinjing didn't dare to truly trust him. Therefore, Xinjing smiled and nodded in the face of Elder Shen's explanation. In that case, when the spirit tribulation lightning punishment ends, the God clan's strongest expert will be responsible for using the map of the universe to trap Yu Haoran and the long-armed ape. The primordial underworld clan's strongest expert will use the primordial golden dipper to directly destroy the souls of Yu Haoran and the long-armed ape. Okay. Elder Shen immediately nodded in agreement with Xinjing's suggestion. 1 hour. The golden lightning rain from the spiritual tribulation lasted for an entire hour before it finally showed signs of weakening. This also allowed everyone present to truly witness the terror of the legendary spiritual tribulation. At the center of the lightning punishment, the long-armed ape that was about to pass the Spirit Tribulation lightning punishment, not only reached a height of 9,999 meters, but its light purple hair was also completely replaced by dark purple hair. The only thing left was the pile of hair on his forehead, which had yet to completely transform. At the same time, a terrifying murderous aura that was not inferior to the Dunglong's vaguely emanated from his body. Raising his head and looking at the golden lightning bolts descending from the dark clouds, long-armed ape stretched out his arms and performed the devouring great art with all his strength. He wanted to use the last of the lightning energy from the thunder punishment to achieve the final transformation of his bloodline. 1,000 meters away from the center of the lightning punishment, Yuhauran was sitting cross-legged in the air with his legs bent. Not only was his ancestral body infinitely close to the 99,999 meters of the sovereign realm, but his originally dark yellow skin had also been completely replaced by a bronze color. It gave people a feeling that he had returned to his natural state. Of course, what really made him go wild with joy was not the transformation of his ancestral body. Instead, it was the grade of his physical body, mental state, and soul power that had smoothly advanced to the peak of the 9th grade martial god realm without touching the bottleneck of his cultivation and triggering the god tribulation lightning punishment. Next, he only needed to use the remaining bit of chaotic spiritual energy to raise his divine power to the peak of the 9th grade martial god realm. Then, he could officially break through to the martial god realm and completely make up for his overdrawn lifespan and lost potential. Raising his head and looking at the golden lightning bolts descending from the dark clouds, Yuhauran dispersed his ancestral transformation. He also stretched out his arms and performed the devouring great art with all his strength. He wanted to use the last of the lightning energy from the thunder punishment to push the grades of his 3 auxiliary realms to the peak. He wanted to make sufficient preparations to break through to the complete 10th grade martial god realm. Whether it was the long-armed ape that was about to complete the atavism transformation or Yuhauran that had the strength to break through to the complete 10th grade martial god realm, the amount and speed of the lightning energy from the thunder punishment using the devouring great art had reached an unimaginably terrifying level. Therefore, the golden lightning that filled the sky was completely devoured by the man and the beast in the blink of an eye. This also revealed Yuhauran and the long-armed ape to everyone's eyes. Attack! Elder Shinxian, who had been secretly prepared, immediately ordered the 8 half-tribulation supremes behind him when he saw Yuhauran and the long-armed ape. Get ready to attack! At the same time, Xinjing also immediately raised the primeval dipper in his hand. The dipper's opening was aimed directly at Yuhauran and the long-armed ape. He also signaled to the 4 half-tribulation supremes behind him. Although the golden lightning from the spiritual tribulation thunder punishment could greatly increase the strength of the spirit, it could also seriously threaten the safety of the spirit. Therefore, when Yuhauran entered the range of the spiritual tribulation thunder punishment, not only did Thaling not continue to use his divine thought to be vigilant of the surrounding situation, but he also took the initiative to retreat into the victor's body. This caused Yuhauran and the long-armed ape to only react when Elder Shinxian's map of the world was above their heads. Seeing the speed of the map of the world, it was already too late for Thaling to regain control of his body to resist and counterattack. Yuhauran did not hesitate at all. He immediately activated the power of the law of space that he had just comprehended and used the law of space teleportation martial technique to narrowly avoid the map of the world. However, the long-armed ape, who had a slightly slower reaction, was forcibly fixed in place by the map of the world. Fortunately, Yuhauran, who had escaped in time, quickly completed the exchange of control of his body with Thaling. The furious Thaling immediately used the terrifying strength of the supremacy realm and directly attacked the 9 half-tribulation supremes of the primordial god clan. Yuhauran had successfully escaped the restraint of the map of the world, which also indicated that the plan to kill the long-armed ape had failed. Xinjing, who knew that he was no match for Yu Haoran, quickly put away the primeval dipper and directly tore the void in front of him. At the same time, he ordered the 4 half-tribulation supremes behind him. Retreat! Thaling, who had quickly killed the 9 primordial god clan experts, did not stop the 5 primordial underworld clan experts from escaping. His 10 fingers quickly gathered the remaining aura of the primeval dipper celestial artifact, and his eyes revealed a trace of nostalgia. Thaling, put away the map of the world that trapped the long-armed ape first. Yu Haoran hurriedly reminded him when he saw Thaling, who was immersed in his memories, and saw that the black clouds in the void above the mountain range had already cracked open. A milky white energy that was like an ocean was about to wash down. Chapter 1942. In Qinghu Mountain Range. Yu Haoran, give the map of the universe to Yunxiang. The heaven and earth map obediently fell into Yu Haoran's hands and was directly transferred to his consciousness space, the pagoda spirit suggested with an indifferent expression. With the help of her spirit-devouring soul physique and the map of the universe that can restrict opponents in a large area, Yunxiang will be one of your most capable helpers in the future. Alright. In the memories of the Destiny Stone Tablet, the detailed introduction of the map of the universe had already given Yu Haoran the idea of giving it to Yunxiang. Therefore, after hearing Thaling's suggestion, he nodded without hesitation. Then, after taking back control of his body from Thaling, Yu Haoran raised his head and looked at the milky white energy that came crashing down like raging waves. His eyes revealed a gratified and expectant look. With the help of such a large amount of lightning punishment rewards, the long-armed ape would be able to achieve a complete transformation in bloodline and strength, and become a true expert of the prince's mansion. However, to his surprise, when the milky white energy that came crashing down was less than 100 meters away from the long-armed ape, a stream of milky white energy suddenly separated from it and rushed towards him directly. Yu Haoran, the spirit tribulation lightning punishment that is beyond the control of the heavenly Tao is the principle of fairness and justice. Faced with the sudden separation of the milky white energy, Thaling was not surprised at all and explained with a smile. Since you interfered with the spirit tribulation lightning punishment, it means that you are also someone who is going through the tribulation lightning punishment. Then, after you succeed, you will also be able to enjoy a portion of the spirit tribulation lightning punishment rewards. I see. As his doubts were cleared, Yu Haoran hurriedly bent his knees and sat cross-legged in the air. As he allowed the milky white energy to enter his body, he carefully experienced the effects of the spirit tribulation lightning punishment rewards. Immediately after, what made him go wild with joy was that the milky white energy rewarded by the spirit tribulation lightning punishment was specifically targeted towards the profound mysteries of laws, the fleshly body, and the grade of divine power. This made him immediately use his self-created heavenly fate mental cultivation method, and then focus on increasing the grade of divine power, as well as comprehending the power of spatial laws. Although the amount of spirit tribulation lightning's reward couldn't be compared to the long-armed ape's reward, the milky white energy that specifically increased the grade of his divine power allowed him to successfully advance to the early 9th level of the martial god realm in less than 3 minutes without touching the bottleneck of his cultivation and the god tribulation lightning's punishment. Furthermore, at the moment the spirit tribulation lightning punishment ended, the grade of his divine power finally reached the peak of the 9th grade martial god realm. The only regrettable thing was that the spirit tribulation lightning 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 tribulation lightning, young friend, thank you. With the help of the baptism of the spirit tribulation lightning punishment and the rewards of the spirit tribulation lightning punishment, the long-armed ape had finally reached the peak of the 9th level of the divine realm. After a simple consolidation of his realm, he immediately flew up to Yuhauran in the air and thanked him with eyes full of excitement. Senior, I've already said the same thing more than once. There's no need to be so courteous between us. Helping you is what I should do as a junior. After finishing his cultivation and getting up, Yuhauran smiled and gestured to him. Then, he carefully sized up the long-armed ape, and a trace of anticipation and worry flashed in his eyes. Senior, how's the harvest from the spirit tribulation lightning punishment? Did your bloodline complete the final transformation? The peak of the 9th level of the divine realm, with the strength of a peak first tribulation sovereign. Not seeing the worry in Yuhauran's eyes, the long-armed ape replied with a trace of dominance. If I use my ancestor's bloodline that has successfully transformed and use my bloodline's innate ability, even a peak third tribulation supremacy wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from me. I might even be able to put up a fight against someone who has just entered the supremacy realm. After replying to this point, the long-armed ape looked past Yuhauran and directly at the southern region, the Hengduan mountain range and Xianying city in the southern region, and a scarlet and violent killing intent appeared in his eyes. Sizzle! After hearing the domineering reply of the long-armed ape, Yuhauran could not help but gasp. Because Yusiki, who had passed the immortal tribulation lightning punishment, also had the cultivation of a peak 9th level martial god, and at most, had the strength of a peak first tribulation sovereign. Even if she used the matching martial skills of her special body constitution and the sage's emotionless mental cultivation method, she could only exert the strength of a peak second tribulation sovereign. Different body constitutions, different divine tribulation lightning punishment, the final harvest of strength was so different. This made Yuhauran extremely shocked, and at the same time, envious of the strength and luck of the innate living beings. However, after seeing the tyrannical look in the long-armed ape's eyes, he couldn't help but start to worry. He was worried that the long-armed ape, which had successfully completed the ancestral awakening transformation, would become the same as its ancestors in ancient times. It would become an arrogant, tyrannical, fearless, and undisciplined world-destroying ape that wouldn't listen to any advice. Therefore, he had to continue to test the long-armed ape's character, and according to the changes in his character, decide his future attitude towards him, whether to continue to be selfless and friendly, or deliberately keep a certain distance. Senior, since you have successfully passed the divine tribulation lightning punishment, why don't you return to the prince's mansion first, and then use the Xian Huang Qi in the mansion to continue to consolidate your cultivation? I will follow your arrangement. Fortunately, the long-armed ape not only quickly withdrew the violence in his eyes, but also his attitude and tone were more polite and more obedient than before. However, the good change of the long-armed ape filled Yuhauran with doubts and confusion. Thaling, what's going on? When he asked Yusiki, Qingfeng, and the rest to return to the prince's mansion, Yuhauran directly asked Thaling, who had a better understanding of the ancient long-armed ape. This is very normal. After hearing Yuhauran's doubts, Thaling did not feel strange at all, and explained with a smile. Yuhauran, the birth of the 4 great spiritual monkeys in ancient times coincided with the end of the ancient demon tribe's rule over the ancient continent. It was also the time when the ancient god tribe, ancient demon tribe, and ancient underworld tribe were flourishing, and their hearts were restless. In the face of the 4 great spiritual monkeys, who were able to cause a change in the entire world when they were just born, and would definitely become peak honorable experts in the future, regardless of whether it was the ancient demon tribe who wanted to continue to be the overlord, or the few top races who wanted to replace them, all of them wanted to capture them alive and train them to be the strongest combat power of their own race. As spiritual creatures bred by heaven and earth, the 4 great spiritual monkeys already had mature intelligence when they were born. When faced with the few top races who wanted to capture them alive, how could they not resist fiercely, and how could they not take bloody revenge afterwards? Unfortunately, the outcome of going against a top race alone was not only to be besieged to death by countless experts, but also to be completely demonized afterwards. Chapter 1943. Feng Run City. Ever since Wu Jingjun, Yusiki, Lu Yuan, the Scarlet Loath, and the long-armed ape had successfully passed the god's tribulation thunder punishment and successfully advanced to the martial god realm of immortality, the entire Feng Run city had completely set off a cultivation frenzy of chasing each other. Other than Lan Rong and a few other generals who had to take some time to deal with the military affairs and intelligence accumulated in Feng Run City, the rest of the elite soldiers either used the formation that Yu Haoran had set up to extract the life essence from the bodies of powerhouses to improve their cultivation or continued to invade other cities in the Great Han Empire to improve their strength. On the other hand, Qin Lingfei and Jian Wuhan, who were similarly unwilling to be outdone, or perhaps it could be said that they were stimulated, brought Yun Xiang, Fang Man, and Xiang Muling to a few dangerous places in the Eastern Territory to undergo adventuring and tempering. They wanted to use this opportunity to quickly improve their cultivation and strength and strive to not become a burden to Yu Haoran. In the prince's mansion, after a simple consolidation of his realm, Yu Haoran brought Yusiki and long-armed ape out of the prince's mansion and Feng Run City quietly. Then, he tore through the void and hurriedly rushed to one of the four guardian families of the Tianxian continent, the Blue Dragon clan, in the Green Forest mountain range between the East region and the Central region. This was because just 5 minutes ago, the Black Tortoise, who had secretly sought refuge with him in Jinyuan's graveyard, had used the top-notch communication jade talisman that they had left behind to inform him of a piece of news. It was that Ji Xing of the Yushu Temple, who had gathered nearly half of the forces and powerhouses in the Tianxian continent and formed the Heaven Alliance, had suddenly led an army to attack one of the four guardian families, the Blue Dragon clan. The expedition launched by Ji Xing of the Yushu Temple meant that the Tianxian continent had truly begun to enter a state of turmoil. At the same time, it also indicated that the half-tribulation supremes and supremes hidden in the endless void were about to return to the Tianxian continent. Whether it was the fake son of destiny of the Yushu Temple, Ji Xing, or the Blue Dragon, White Tiger, and Vermilion Bird clans of the Guardian clans, Yu Haoran didn't care about their survival at all. What he really cared about was whether the spirits of triple annihilation, who could control the consciousness of the heavens, would intervene in the battle between the two top forces at the last moment. What he really wanted was the deep heritage of the Blue Dragon clan, the White Tiger clan, and the Vermilion Bird clan that had been passed down for countless years. After all, if the people in the prince's mansion wanted to continue improving their cultivation and strength in a short period of time, they had to find ways to increase their experience, broaden their horizons, and improve their own accumulation. The deep heritage of the Blue Dragon clan, the White Tiger clan, and the Vermilion Bird clan could completely satisfy the needs of Yusiki, Wu Jingjun, and the others. This was also one of the important reasons why he temporarily didn't care about controlling the prince's mansion and returning to the southern region's 100 Chi Gate. The power of the law of space combined with the method of tearing the void allowed Yu Haoran's speed to increase by at least 10 times. This also reduced the time that would have taken at least half an hour to reach the Qingsan mountain range by nearly 20 minutes. When Yu Haoran brought Yusiki and the long-armed ape to the summit of a mountain less than 100 miles away from the Qingsan mountain range, he found that the two forces were still in a stalemate and were only testing each other's strength. Although Ji Xing used his fake identity as the Chosen One and the protection of the three Annihilators to gather nearly half of the forces and experts in the Tianxian continent, most of these forces and experts were just a bunch of mobs. For secluded families like the Lan clan, ancient families like the Zhou clan, and top sects like the Flowing Cloud sect, there weren't many martial gods and half-tribulation supreme martial artists. If it weren't for the fact that the Blue Dragon clan, the White Tiger clan, and the Vermilion Bird clan lost too many half-tribulation supreme martial artists in the Qinghu mountain range, and that their supreme ancestors couldn't return in time in a short period of time, the Heaven Alliance that Ji Xing had painstakingly built wouldn't have the strength to challenge the Guardian clans. Just as Yu Haoran used his divine thought that wasn't inferior to the peak of the First Tribulation Supreme Martial Artist realm to observe the situation of the two forces testing each other, Thaling's strange surprised voice suddenly came from his sea of consciousness. "I didn't expect him to be here all this time." "Who is it?" Yu Haoran asked hurriedly. "The heaven-punishing demon emperor who escaped from White Bone City. He is now a heaven-punishing demon god, who is at the peak of the 9th grade martial god realm," Thaling replied with a hint of joy in his eyes. "He's not dead yet?" Yu Haoran asked doubtfully. Back then, in order to deal with the 4 Emperor Wu experts of the 4 great Guardian clans, the heaven-punishing demon emperor, who had just reached the Emperor Wu realm, used his own flesh, divine soul, and life essence in exchange for the power of the god-slaying sword, which was full of evil-devouring power. Although he succeeded in killing the 4 Emperor Wu experts of the 4 great Guardian clans, the heaven-punishing demon emperor's life basically came to an end because of the evil-devouring power of the god-slaying sword. This was also an important reason why he was willing to let the heaven-punishing demon emperor take away the god-slaying sword. After all, the heaven-punishing demon emperor was his disciple in name. Death. Seeing that Yu Haoran was still kept in the dark by the heaven-punishing demon god's method of death, Thaling could not help but mock him coldly. "Yu Haoran, since the beginning of the world, I, Thaling, have come into contact with all kinds of living beings. I have seen many heroes who were not afraid of death, many sinister and cunning villains, many arrogant and disrespectful heroes, and many treacherous hypocrites. However, I have never seen a person like the heaven-punishing demon emperor, who is so attached to his life that he is close to madness. In my opinion, if you want him to willingly give up his life, unless the world falls and the stars change, he will do whatever it takes to survive." "Thaling, didn't you say that the god-slaying sword, which has the evil-devouring power, would eventually devour the heaven-punishing demon god until there is nothing left of him?" Yu Haoran could not help but frown and question him after hearing Thaling's evaluation of the heaven-punishing demon god. "That's right." After nodding his head to confirm his initial speculation, Thaling replied to Yu Haoran's question with a cold smile. "Yu Haoran, if the heaven-punishing demon god was an upright person, he would definitely die tragically under the evil-devouring power of the god-slaying sword. However, not only is he not an upright person, but he is also an unscrupulous and sinister hero. He used the life essence of the powerhouses of the Blue Dragon clan to offset the devouring power of the god-slaying sword on his own life essence. Then, he used a special secret technique to forcibly extract the life essence that the god-slaying sword could not consume in a short period of time to increase his cultivation and strength." After replying to this point, Thaling used the powerful divine consciousness of the Supreme Realm to check the heaven-punishing demon god from head to toe before continuing. Chapter 1944. Thaling, can you take back the immortal killing sword from the heaven-punishing demon Celestial? Yu Haoran was a little annoyed by the heaven-punishing demon Celestial's deception. However, when he thought of the fact that their relationship was only SOSO, he knew that the heaven-punishing demon Celestial had no obligation to tell him the truth. However, the heaven-punishing demon Celestial's deliberate deception also eliminated the last trace of pity he had for the heaven-punishing demon Celestial. It also made him determined to take back the immortal killing sword. If it were other supreme experts, they would probably be helpless against the heaven-punishing demon Celestial who could stimulate the evil-devouring power of the immortal killing sword. Then, I, Thaling, only need to move my finger. Faced with Yu Haoran's decision to take back the immortal killing sword, Thaling immediately replied confidently. "When will you do it?" Believing that Thaling could easily take back the immortal killing sword, Yuhauran was even more eager to take back the immortal killing sword. Then, he would use the bloody battle between the Heavenly Alliance and the Guardian families to test the true power of the combination of the immortal killing, immortal eliminating, immortal trapping, and sword-killing swords. When the conflict between the Yushu Temple and the Guardian families erupts, I will take back the immortal killing sword secretly. If he wanted to take back the immortal killing sword by force, he would definitely encounter fierce resistance from the heaven-punishing demon Celestial. With the cultivation of the peak level 9 martial god, the heaven-punishing demon Celestial would delay taking back the immortal killing sword for at least 3 seconds. This would easily attract the attention of countless experts present. In order not to cause unnecessary trouble for Yuhauran, after careful consideration, Thaling finally decided to wait for the best time to take action. Okay. After nodding in agreement with Thaling's plan to take back the immortal killing sword, Yuhauran continued to focus on the two sides who were fighting. Whether it was the time of inheritance or the depth of accumulation, the Heavenly Alliance, which was temporarily established, was a far cry from the Guardian families, which had been passed down since ancient times. Therefore, in the 9 consecutive battles, except for Emperor Wu, who was a peak level 9 expert from the Lan family, who won by a narrow margin, the rest of the battles were all won by the Guardian families. Furthermore, every expert who failed died tragically under the ferocious attacks of the Guardian families. Originally, he wanted to send experts from top sects and itinerant cultivators to continue probing. However, Ji Xing, who suddenly received the order from Tao Lord Vast Star, immediately took out a large flag embroidered with countless names and ordered the more than 1 million experts of the Heavenly Alliance behind him. All-out attack. Ji Xing's sudden order for an all-out attack not only caused the experts of the Guardian families to feel disbelief, even people like Yuhauran who wanted to take advantage of the situation were also puzzled. It was because according to the battle habits of the Tian Xian land, the final outcome of the battle would be decided through the battle between the top elite warriors of each powerhouse. In this way, not only could they reduce the losses of the winning side, they could also capture more captives from the losing side, and obtain more cultivation resources and treasures. As the master of the Yushu Temple's heavenly palace and the leader of the Heavenly Alliance, Ji Xing must be very clear about the rules of war that had been going on for countless years. Then why did he suddenly change his course of action? Soul-locking banner. Thaling, who also did not understand why Ji Xing suddenly gave the order for an all-out attack, gradually shifted his attention from the chaotic battle of the millions of people to the flag in the other party's hand. When Thaling saw the countless names embroidered on the flag and felt the fluctuations of fate emanating from each name, he suddenly thought of the Destiny stone tablet, which was also engraved with countless names of living beings, and the Destiny stone tablet's control over the lives of living beings. A very vicious forbidden magic weapon immediately flashed through his mind. Thaling, what is the soul-locking banner? When he heard Thaling shout out the origin of the flag in Ji Xing's hand, Yuhauran hurriedly checked the memory inheritance of the Destiny stone tablet. However, he did not find any information about the soul-locking banner, so he could not help but ask. Yuhauran, the so-called soul-locking banner uses the energy of the law of trapping to directly extract all the fate gathered by living beings, and then uses the power of the law of destruction to bind the fate and soul. Looking at the flag in Ji Xing's hand and the names embroidered on the flag, Thaling explained with a grave expression. In this case, through control of the soul-locking banner, Ji Xing can decide the life and death of every name left on the flag using the power of the law of destruction. After hearing Thaling's explanation, Yuhauran could not help but frown and speculate. Thaling, according to your explanation just now, isn't the soul-locking banner and the Destiny stone tablet exactly the same? That's right. While nodding to confirm Yuhauran's speculation, Thaling's eyes flashed with a trace of fierce killing intent as he continued to explain. In fact, the soul-locking banner was created by the strongest of the three spirits of annihilation, Tao Lord Scorching Sun, based on the Destiny stone tablet that appeared in ancient times, and at least hundreds of millions of living beings were killed when ancient times were destroyed. But there is a difference between the two. That is, the Destiny stone tablet is formed from the fates of billions of living beings, while the soul-locking banner is artificially refined. The Destiny stone tablet can control fate, while the soul-locking banner can directly take a person's life. Therefore, the Destiny stone tablet represents orthodoxy, while the soul-locking banner represents evil. Yu Haoran was not interested in the difference between orthodoxy and evil at all. He was now worried about whether the Blue Dragon Clan, White Tiger Clan, and Vermilion Bird Clan could withstand the siege of a group of powerhouses who had no choice but to risk their lives under the threat of the soul-locking banner. Yu Haoran, if the supreme ancestors of the Guardian clans do not return in time, and at the same time lose the help of the Black Tortoise Clan who is proficient in formations. Thaling's spiritual sense quickly scanned the battlefield and directly gave the final fate of the Guardian clans. Then, the Blue Dragon Clan, White Tiger Clan, and Vermilion Bird Clan will definitely be exterminated today, and the history of the four great Guardian clans ruling the profound Sky Continent will also completely come to an end. Thaling, with your current strength, can your spiritual sense directly check the situation of the White Tiger Clan and Vermilion Bird Clan? Hearing Thaling's final judgment of the fate of the Guardian clans, while Yu Haoran lamented the impermanence of the affairs of the world, he also immediately realized that the opportunity to obtain the resources of the other two Guardian clans had arrived. However, before taking action, he still needed to confirm the methods that the White Tiger Clan and Vermilion Bird Clan had prepared beforehand. Yu Haoran, let your second doppelganger who is proficient in formations accompany Siki to the Vermilion Bird Clan, and let your first doppelganger bring the strongest long-armed ape to the White Tiger Clan. After interacting with each other for so many years, how could Thaling not guess Yu Haoran's intentions? Therefore, he immediately mobilized the space-time energy and chaos imprint of his main body, Victor, to assist his spiritual sense. After carefully searching the White Tiger Clan and Vermilion Bird Clan from the inside out, he took the initiative to come up with a plan to steal the accumulated resources of the two great clans. Chapter 1945. Yu Haoran brought Siki and the long-armed ape to a quiet valley by tearing open the void and temporarily distancing themselves from the two parties who were fighting. Thaling used his powerful divine sense to confirm that there was no danger within 1,000 miles of the mountain range. Yu Haoran immediately summoned his first and second doppelganger from the victor and introduced them to Siki and the long-armed ape respectively. Siki, who had successfully unlocked the inherited memories of the two Supremes from the ancient and recent times, knew about the I-Chi turning Trinity technique created by Supreme's Lier. Therefore, she quickly accepted and adapted to the three identical Yu Haoran. As for the long-armed ape, who did not know about Supreme's Laozi and the I-Chi turning Trinity technique, he was constantly sizing up the three identical Yu Haoran in front of him. He was unable to calm down the shock in his heart for a long time. It was also difficult for him to accept the fact that he had an independent consciousness and physical body, but was only a doppelganger. This was because there were still some half-tribulation supreme old ancestors of the Guardian clans hidden in the endless void, as well as the ancestors of the Supremes, as well as 4 divine beasts whose cultivation had reached the peak of the Supreme's realm in the ancient times. Therefore, in order to safely steal the accumulated resources of the White Tiger Clan and the Vermilion Bird Clan, not only did they need to steal at lightning speed, but they also needed to ensure that they did not reveal any traces of themselves. This required both parties to have mutual trust in each other. After the long-armed ape recovered from his shock, and was able to accept the 3 identical versions of himself, Yuhauran told Yusiki and the long-armed ape in detail about the plan to steal the accumulated resources of the White Tiger clan and the Vermilion Bird clan. Yusiki and the long-armed ape did not hesitate in the slightest. Instead, they nodded excitedly and directly led the two doppelganger to the White Tiger clan and the Vermilion Bird clan respectively. After Yusiki and the long-armed ape left the valley with their clones, Yuhauran returned to the mountain peak by tearing the void. After that, he immediately put on the mask that he had obtained from the thief sect's treasury and used the secret technique that Thaling had taught him to change his aura. Then, he directly rushed to the battlefield 100 miles away. Regardless of whether it was the Guardian families formed by the Blue Dragon clan, the White Tiger clan, or the Vermilion Bird clan, or the Heaven Alliance formed by Jixing, they were all his enemies who would not rest until he was dead. Therefore, after entering the battlefield openly, Yuhauran only had one way to deal with it, no matter who his opponent was, and that was to use his powerful strength to directly kill his opponent. When martial gods and half-tribulation's supreme experts attacked, the destructive power and lethality they caused was too great. It was very easy for them to accidentally injure their companions and destroy the mountain range where the Blue Dragon clan was located. Helpless, they could only choose to fight in the void tens of thousands of meters above. Therefore, Yuhauran, who had the strength of a peak First Tribulation Supreme, was like a ferocious tiger that had pounced into a flock of sheep. He quickly killed his way to the front of the Guardian formation that led to the Blue Dragon clan's encampment. He continued to attack the experts from the Guardian families with all his strength while waiting for Thaling to break the Guardian formation that guarded the mountain gate. Although the Guardian formation set up by the Blue Dragon clan had reached the level of a supreme, it only lasted for less than 3 minutes in front of Thaling, who was a master of formations, before he easily broke through a gap. After secretly using the spatial teleportation rule martial technique to avoid everyone's attention, Yuhauran quietly passed through the gap in the Guardian formation and easily entered the Blue Dragon clan's encampment. What rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth! The moment he entered the encampment, the pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth that had condensed into a white mist made him sigh involuntarily. Yuhauran, there are at least 3 level 1 lower spiritual veins, 2 level 1 middle spiritual veins, and 1 level 1 upper spiritual veins sealed under the mountain range where the Blue Dragon clan is located. Just as Yuhauran was sighing about the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the Blue Dragon clan's encampment, Thaling, who had used his divine thought to search the entire encampment, reminded him excitedly. Not to mention the rich spiritual energy mist, it's not impossible to directly transform it into innate spiritual energy in the form of mist. Thaling, do you think we should go to the Sutra Depository and the Treasure Vault first, or immediately take the 6 divine veins underground? After hearing Thaling's reminder, Yuhauran felt very excited, but at the same time, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Based on what he had comprehended when he successfully comprehended the spatial laws, he knew that his opportunity to break through to the supremacy stage lay in the southern region's 100 feet sec. Therefore, he planned to move the Prince Consort's mansion to above the 100 feet sec. However, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the area where the 100 Chi Gate was located was too thin. It was not suitable for the people in the prince's mansion and the 100,000 elite soldiers to cultivate and break through. Therefore, he needed to use a formation that could gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to forcefully improve the spiritual energy environment of the 100 Chi Gate. Originally, he had planned to go to the Death Swamp, one of the 10 great forbidden zones, and take the risk to search for a level 1 lower spiritual vein to use as the foundation for the formation that gathered the spiritual energy. At the same time, he would think of a way to use divine elixirs to exchange for 80 level 2, level 3, level 4, and level 5 spiritual veins. Together with the level 1 lower spiritual vein, He would be able to set up a formation that could reverse the power of heaven and earth, completely changing the environment of the mountain range where the 100 Chi Gate was located. However, there were more divine veins underground, and they were of a higher grade. Therefore, he didn't need to take the risk to go to the Death Swamp, and he could immediately control the prince's mansion to return to the 100 Chi Gate in the southern region. Yu Haoran, the 6 divine veins underground are not only the foundation of the Blue Dragon clan's residence, but also the source of energy for the defensive formation. Although he didn't know why Yu Haoran was troubled by such a simple choice, Thaling still explained patiently. If we take the 6 divine veins now, it will immediately cause the entire mountain range to collapse, and it will definitely alarm the 2 sides that are fighting. This way, we won't have the time or opportunity to go to the Sutra Depository and the Treasure Vault. Thaling, I'm sorry, I've been too focused. Thaling's patient explanation made Yu Haoran immediately realize that he had cared too much about returning to the southern region and wanted too much to change the environment of the 100 Chi Gate, causing a flaw that shouldn't have appeared in his mental state. Therefore, after using his powerful mental state to erase this flaw, he solemnly apologized to Thaling. It's fine. After waving his hand to indicate that it was fine, Thaling immediately pointed out the direction to the Sutra Depository and the Treasure Vault, and then reminded Yu Haoran to go there as soon as possible. Without any hesitation, Yu Haoran immediately followed Thaling's instructions and used the law of space martial technique to quickly approach the Treasure Vault. Unlike most treasure vaults in the Tianxian continent, the Blue Dragon clan's treasure vault only had 3 floors, but the area it occupied was about the size of a third-rate sect. Chapter 1946. In the residence of the Blue Dragon clan. Looking at the antique 3-story treasury in front of him, Yu Haoran, who had used the power of the law of space to temporarily hide in the trunk of a big tree 30 meters away from the treasury, revealed a solemn expression in his eyes. As a clan that had inherited the bloodline of the Blue Dragon, a peak honorable divine beast from ancient times. Even if the honorable realm ancestor hiding in the endless void had not returned for the time being. Even if the entire clan was in danger of being exterminated. In the face of the deep foundation that had been accumulated for countless years, Thaling did not dare to let down his guard at all. Therefore, when Yu Haoran was hiding in the trunk of the big tree with the help of the law of space, Thaling used the powerful divine sense of a peak 3rd-grade honorable to carefully check the surroundings within 1,000 meters of the treasury 3 times. At the same time, he also used his powerful formation energy to find a flaw in the treasury's defensive formation in a short period of time, and carefully checked the situation on the 1st floor of the treasury's hall. After confirming that the treasury was 100% safe, he signaled to Yu Haoran that he could leave the big tree that he was hiding in temporarily, and then directly sneak into the treasury through the gap in the formation's defensive formation that he had opened. However, just when Yu Haoran was about to leave the big tree and enter the treasury happily, the doomed spirit mouse in the space in his heart suddenly told him that there was a terrifying expert hiding in front of the treasury's door that he did not dare to collect the aura of fate of the other party. Moreover, as the other party's strength was too strong, and the aura of fate was too strange, it caused him to be unable to determine the other party's true cultivation and origin through the Destiny Stone tablet. With the help of the 12 divine fiends formation set up by the ancient demon clan, as well as the long-armed ape's spiritual tribulation lightning punishment and lightning punishment reward, he had successfully raised his mental state cultivation, physical grade, divine power, and soul power to the limit of a peak 9th-grade martial god, and did not need the remaining chaotic spiritual energy for the time being. Therefore, in order to be able to control the fate of more top experts, he gave all the remaining chaotic spiritual energy to the doomed spirit mouse, and let the doomed spirit mouse use it to raise his own level. The Calamity Spirit Mouse had already reached the peak of the 3rd Tribulation Supremacy Realm with the help of the chaotic spiritual energy converted from the 5 elements connate crystal. The fate of any living being below the supremacy realm was already in his control. To be able to make the Destiny Calamity Spirit Rat, who had reached the pinnacle of the third tribulation Supreme Being realm, not even daring to collect the aura of an expert, was enough to show that the other party's cultivation had not only reached the Supreme Being realm, but the level of the Supreme Being realm was probably very high, at least at the 7th grade Supreme Being realm. "You Howren, are you sure that the life-stealing spirit mouse's senses are correct?" After hearing Yu Howren's solemn reminder, Thaling immediately mobilized his victor's spacetime energy and mark of chaos to re-examine the situation in front of the third floor's door. But what was the result of the examination? He still did not discover anything. He could not help but begin to suspect that the life-bane spirit mouse's ability to sense the aura of fate was off. No! As the master of the Destiny Steel, Yu Howren knew that the steel contained the aura of fate of all living beings in the world. Any change in the aura of fate within the steel could not escape the doomed spirit mouse's senses. As a result, he shook his head and rejected Thaling's question with a grave expression. "Because when I used the power of the laws of space to stealthily approach the door of the treasury, my sixth sense immediately gave me a strong and fatal warning, so I believe in the doomed spirit mouse's judgment. Yu Howren, what should we do next?" Since he could not use his soul to determine the exact location and whereabouts of the other party, he could not easily enter the treasury through the gap in the formation in front of the door. For a moment, Thaling did not know what to do. Wait. He turned around and glanced at Yu Howren, who had a sliver of joy in his eyes, and gloated. "When the snipe and the clam fight, I'll think of a way to benefit." Yu Howren's gloating reminder made Thaling immediately mobilize his soul to observe the situation behind him. Soon, he discovered the 3 half-tribulation supremes from the Heavenly Alliance. He immediately understood what Yu Howren meant when he said that the snipe and the clam fight, the fisherman would benefit. As a result, Thaling, whose eyes were also filled with a sliver of gloating, immediately used his soul's special secret technique to strictly monitor the area within 100 meters of the treasury. He wanted to see if there was a deviation in the doomed spirit mouse's aura of fate, or if there was a mistake in his inspection because he was not strong enough. They did not have to wait for long. In just a dozen seconds, a peak third tribulation supremes silently appeared in front of the treasury door with 2 peak second tribulation supremes companions. After carefully inspecting several times with their soul's soul and confirming that there was no danger, the 3 half-tribulation supremes carefully removed the magic treasures that concealed their bodies and auras. Then, they looked at the antique 3-story treasury in front of them with excited expressions. Subsequently, an old man in a green robe appeared in front of the treasury door in a flash. He sat down cross-legged and began to inspect and crack the defensive formation that led to the treasury. In order to verify whose judgment was wrong, Thaling had left a gap in the formation that led to the treasury. Therefore, the green-robed old man, who was proficient in formations, quickly discovered the abnormality in the formation of the treasury. "Oh no, someone has entered the treasury in advance." Through the gap in the defensive formation that Thaling had opened in advance, the green-robed old man suddenly opened his eyes and reminded loudly with a sudden change in expression when he saw a large number of top spiritual stones and spiritual meridians, as well as special crystals and treasures on the first floor of the treasury. After hearing the green-robed old man's reminder, the 2 half-tribulation supremes did not hesitate and appeared in front of the treasury door in a flash. Then, according to the gap in the defensive formation that the green-robed old man had pointed out, they rushed into the treasury as fast as lightning. However, just as the peak third tribulation supremes were about to enter the treasury through the gap in the defensive formation, a tongue appeared out of thin air and directly entangled the peak third tribulation supremes. Then, it quickly dragged the peak third tribulation supremes into a bloody mouth that also appeared out of thin air. after seeing the tongue and mouth that appeared out of thin air and easily swallowed the strongest companion, the green-robed old man and his companion did not hesitate at all. They immediately turned around and wanted to quickly escape the treasury. However, the tongue that stretched out again and instantly entangled them with the barrier of space and time. Then, it also dragged them into the bloody mouth. This is a blood-void beast that contains the energy of the spatial laws. When the long tongue that appeared out of thin air in front of the treasury entangled the peak Third Tribulation Supremes, Thaling, who had fought with them before, had already recognized the other party's origin. At the same time, he finally understood how the other party could avoid his soul's detection. Chapter 1947. In the residence of the Blue Dragon clan, in front of the treasure vault on the 3rd floor, the blood-void beast was a powerful spiritual beast born from the origin of blood. It was an existence similar to the empty spirit rat and the life-stealing spirit rat. The blood-void beast fed on the scattered spatial rules of energy. It was the only existence in the world, and also one of the few existences in ancient times that could completely suppress the 10 great ferocious beasts, including the ferocious beast Chi, which even the rules of heaven could not do anything about. Usually, the blood-void beast lived in the turbulence of the spatial fault and used the turbulence to train its body, which was comparable to a heavenly treasure. It would only leave the spatial fault and appear in front of the world when it sensed the fluctuation of the spatial rules of energy. As Thaling's original body, the spacetime victor, stored a large amount of spatial and spatial rules of energy, there was a very fierce conflict between them in ancient times. The final outcome of the conflict was that the previous weapon spirit of the spacetime victor had no choice but to pay the price of self-destruction to perish together with the blood-void beast. Originally, Thaling, who had received all the memories of the previous weapon spirit, thought that it was impossible for a blood-void beast that could use the spatial rules of energy to appear in this world. After all, the great calamity of ancient times had caused the complete destruction of the rules of fate, time, space, trapping, and destruction. Unless there was a living being who could comprehend the spatial rules of energy again and gradually advance it to the profound mystery of the spatial rules of energy, then use great perseverance and wisdom to gather the scattered fragments of the spatial rules of energy again, only then could the spatial rules of energy reappear in the world. After experiencing the changes of the ancient, middle, and recent ancient times, Thaling knew that other than Yuhauran, no other living being could successfully comprehend the spatial rules of energy. In the absence of the spatial rules of energy, it was impossible for the world to breed a blood-void beast that had reached the supremacy level. Therefore, the blood-void beast that appeared in front of the treasure vault could only be the one that had been born in ancient times. Although Thaling did not know how the blood-void beast had survived the self-destruction of the previous weapon spirit, he knew that Yuhauran's plan to steal the rich heritage of the Blue Dragon clan had been foiled. This was because he had no way of dealing with the blood-void beast for the time being before his cultivation recovered to the peak of 9th grade sovereign. There were very few records of the blood-foe beast in the memories of the Destiny Stone Steel, so Yuhauran could not help but fall into deep thought after hearing Thaling's detailed introduction. In a situation where the life-stealing spirit rat couldn't control the other party's fate and Thaling wasn't a match for the other party, he should have immediately given up on the plan to steal the treasures in the treasury. However, Yuhauran vaguely felt that something was amiss when the blood-void beast swallowed the 3 half-tribulation supreme beings of the Heavenly Alliance with its tongue and mouth. Through the power of spatial laws, he discovered that when the blood-void beast's tongue and mouth appeared out of thin air, a faint spatial ripple had appeared in front of the treasure vault. This was too abnormal for a blood-void beast that could use the energy of the spatial laws. After all, with his current understanding of the power of spatial laws, he could make the space completely still when he used the spatial laws' martial technique of teleportation. At the same time, based on Thaling's introduction of the blood-void beast's habits, The fact that it could guard the Blue Dragon clan's treasure vault meant that there must be a spatial treasure in the treasure vault that could attract the Blood Void beast. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Yuhauran finally decided to take the risk and break into the treasure vault. After hearing Yuhauran's speculation about the Blood Void beast's real situation, Thaling finally nodded in agreement with Yuhauran's decision to take the risk after careful consideration. However, before taking the risk, he had to be fully prepared. Therefore, after gesturing to Yuhauran for a while, Thaling returned to the top floor of the Victor's main body and returned to the space in his sea of consciousness with 9 light purple formation flags. Then, he mobilized the space-time energy in the Victor's main body and silently placed the 9 light purple formation flags in different positions in front of the treasure vault. After fusing the condensed seal with the 9 light purple formation flags, he gestured to Yuhauran to take action. Taking a deep breath, Yuhauran took out the celestial trapping sword that could increase the power of spatial martial technique. Then, he left the tree where he was hiding and approached the door of the treasure vault step by step. When he reached the door of the treasure vault and pretended to charge through the gap in the defensive formation, the long tongue, which had disappeared, appeared behind Yuhauran out of thin air. Spatial cut. The moment the long tongue appeared, Yuhauran, who had sensed the spatial ripple, turned around abruptly and immediately used the spatial law martial technique that he had prepared beforehand. Bang bang bang! Countless spatial blades formed by the spatial cut slashed at the long tongue just as it was about to attack. Accompanied by a series of clashing sounds, the spatial blades that could easily cut through the void were bounced off by the long tongue's defense. This alone proved that Thaling's understanding of the Blood Void beast was real. Yuhauran did not panic at all. He immediately mobilized the power of the spatial law and forced it into the celestial trapping sword in his hand. Then, he directly used a spatial law martial technique that he had yet to truly master, the hanging sword slash. Perhaps it was because of the great pressure brought about by the Blood Void beast, or perhaps it was because he had not relaxed his understanding of the power of the spatial law. In the end, he successfully used the hanging sword slash with the help of the celestial trapping sword. The sharp sword chi that instantly appeared in front of the long tongue slashed at the tip of the tongue. Poof! Accompanied by a tearing sound, the sharp sword chi broke through the strong defense of the tip of the tongue and cut a wound about 5 centimeters long on the tip of the tongue. Then, a crystal-clear white energy flowed out of the wound on the tip of the tongue. Pure energy of the spatial law. Seeing the white energy flowing out of the wound on the tip of the tongue, Yuhauran's eyes flashed with surprise. He immediately used the spatial law martial technique of teleportation and appeared in front of the tip of the tongue in an instant. With a wave of his sleeve, he swept away all the white energy that flowed out. At the same time, he activated the full power of the celestial trapping sword and stabbed it into the wound on the tip of the tongue that had lost its defense. Squeak, squeak, squeak! Accompanied by a shrill squeal that sounded like a mouse, the void in front of the treasure vault suddenly shattered like a mirror. Then, a pure white mouse that looked very similar to the empty spirit mouse and the life-stealing spirit mouse appeared in front of Yuhauran. Chapter 1948. In the residence of the Blue Dragon clan, in front of the 3rd floor of the treasury. It really is him. He looked at the little white mouse that fell out of the void. Especially when he saw the small eyes that were as deep as the Milky Way and the small scars at the corners of his eyes that were difficult to remove, Thaling immediately confirmed that he was the Blood Void beast that had come into being in ancient times and had a conflict with the previous artifact's spirit. When he thought of how the previous artifact's spirit had been forced to self-destruct his spirit body, the hatred that surged in Thaling's heart caused him to lose his rationality and rush out of the knowledge sea with the spacetime victor to avenge the previous artifact's spirit. Fortunately, Yuhauran, who had recovered from his shock, instinctively remembered the deep hatred between Thaling and the blood-void beast and discovered his plan of revenge in time. Without any hesitation, he immediately mobilized all of his consciousness to seal the knowledge sea and used a special secret technique to awaken Thaling, who had been blinded by hatred. In the end, when Thaling rushed to the edge of the knowledge sea with the spacetime victor, the special secret technique successfully awakened him from his insanity. Knowing that his emotions were affected by the previous artifact spirit's remnant consciousness, Thaling immediately used his powerful state of mind to forcefully suppress the raging hatred in his heart. At the same time, he tried his best to eliminate the influence of the previous artifact spirit's remnant consciousness and finally calmed down. "Who are you?" the blood-void beast asked with a look of surprise in its eyes as it used a portion of the pure energy of the laws of space to forcefully expel the immortal trapping sword from the tip of its tongue and quickly retract its injured tongue. "My name is Yuhauran. I am the only son-in-law of the Great Qin Empire, as well as the first Pill Emperor and Pill Deity in the profound Sky Continent to advance to the ranks of Pill Emperor and Pill Deity, Array Emperor in the Array Dao, Poison Dao Grandmaster, and Formula Dao Grandmaster. At the same time, I have been on the path of cultivation for less than 5 years and am already at the peak of Emperor Wu's 9th level of cultivation. I also possess the strength of a first Tribulation Supreme." Yuhauran praised himself as much as he could while trying to resolve Thaling's hatred towards the blood-void beast. This was because the laws of space had suddenly surged the moment the blood-foe beast fell out of space. It made him realize that the blood-foe beast was probably unimaginably helpful in increasing his comprehension of the laws of space. In fact, whether or not his laws of space would be able to successfully advance to the next level in a short period of time all depended on this blood-void beast. "Never heard of it." Narrowing its tiny eyes, the blood-hollow beast tried to recall for a while, then shook its head, indicating that it had never heard of Yuhauran. Then, he asked with a hint of nervousness in his eyes, "Yuhauran, have you successfully comprehended the power of spatial laws?" "That's right." As he nodded in acknowledgement, Yuhauran directly used the laws of space's teleportation to prove his breakthrough and achievement in the laws of space. After receiving Yuhauran's acknowledgement and personally witnessing his usage of the laws of teleportation, the nervousness in the blood-foe beast's eyes was immediately replaced by excitement. Its slender white tail constantly slammed against the ground. Close to a minute later, the excitement in the blood-foe beast's eyes gradually calmed down. "Empressine." He stared straight into Yuhauran's eyes and asked eagerly, "Yuhauran, are you willing to make a deal with me?" Yuhauran could roughly guess what the blood-foe beast wanted to make, so he waved his hand with a smile and said, "Speak. I can help you comprehend the laws of space in a short period of time and successfully advance to the next level, but you have to agree to a condition of mine." The blood-foe beast could tell that Yuhauran was interested in the deal it had just proposed, so it solemnly stated the terms of the deal. "Once you reach the peak of the laws of space, you have to think of a way to gather the fragments of the laws of space scattered throughout the world, then extract a portion of the energy from each fragment and give it to me. Thaling, what do you say?" The terms of the deal the blood-foe beast proposed were exactly as he had guessed, so Yuhauran had already decided to agree. However, before agreeing to the deal, he had to ask for Thaling's opinion. If Thaling could not let go of his hatred for the blood-foe beast, then he could only reluctantly refuse the deal. After all, no matter how important the mysteries of the laws of space were, they were not as important as Thaling, who was like a father and a teacher. Faced with the temptation of advancing to the next level of the laws of space and the laws of space, Yuhauran was able to consider his feelings in advance. While Thaling was moved by this, how could he let Yuhauran give up on the hope of becoming stronger just because of his personal hatred? Moreover, it was the previous artifact spirit who had an irreconcilable hatred for the blood-foe beast. Although the new Yuhauran had an obligation to avenge the previous artifact spirit, He also had a responsibility to temporarily let go of his hatred for Yuhauran. Thus, after some self-counseling, Thaling finally decided to temporarily turn from an enemy to a friend. Yuhauran, agree to the deal with the blood foe beast. Thaling, thank you. Knowing how much Thaling had sacrificed in order to finally agree to his deal with the blood foe beast, Yuhauran was also moved and hurriedly thanked him solemnly. Yuhauran, we're family. There's no need to be so courteous between us. Thaling hurriedly waved his hand in response to Yuhauran's gratitude. Blood foe beast, I agree. After taking a deep breath and calming his feelings of gratitude, Yuhauran nodded solemnly and agreed to the deal. Wonderful! After receiving Yuhauran's agreement, the blood foe beast excitedly cheered and immediately appeared on Yuhauran's shoulder in a flash. Just as he was about to further explain how he could raise the power of the laws of space to the next level, a familiar aura that originated from his bloodline caused his eyes to immediately reveal a fierce killing intent as he asked, Yuhauran, tell me the truth. Have you seen a stone pagoda with a mysterious yellow hue? Blood foe beast, not only have I, Yuhauran, seen the Spacetime Victor, but I also have a close relationship with the Spacetime Victor's artifact spirit. I wonder if you'll reconsider our deal after hearing this news? Since he had the blood foe beast by his side at all times, he would have to meet Thaling sooner or later. It was better to meet him sooner rather than later. Therefore, in the face of the blood foe beast's murderous questioning, Yuhauran did not hide anything. Yuhauran's obviously aggressive reply was completely out of the blood foe beast's expectations. However, by the time it really reacted, it immediately flew away from Yuhauran and asked with a vigilant expression. Chapter 1949. In the residence of the Blue Dragon family, in front of the third floor of the treasury. I'm here. Thaling, who had figured out the blood void beast's true identity, calmly left the space of the Sea of Consciousness and appeared in front of the blood void beast. You're not Supreme Purple Spirit. The blood void beast looked at the purple-robed middle-aged man in front of Yuhauran. His appearance, temperament, and aura were exactly the same as Supreme Purple Spirit in ancient times. However, as an opponent who had almost perished together with him, the blood void beast immediately realized that this was not the real blood void beast. The murderous look in his eyes eased a lot. Blood void beast, I'm the Supreme Purple Spirit who caused you to lose your half-immortal foundation by exploding my own godly soul in ancient times. Thaling took a step forward and refuted the blood void beast's question. His tone was full of provocation. Now, do you really want to take revenge on me? Then come at me directly. That's enough. Don't flatter yourself. The blood void beast rolled its eyes at the tower spirit and retorted in a disdainful tone. Compared to Supreme Purple Spirit who destroyed my half-immortal foundation, you're nothing. I don't even want to talk to you now. You! Thaling was so angry that he didn't know how to refute the blood void beast's disdainful reply. The blood void beast's evaluation was not false. As Sovereign Purple Spirit, who had been born at the beginning of the world, whether it was his spirit body that had built his foundation from the chaotic chi, his experience in the world-destroying battle of spiritual artifacts, or his use of space-time energy and the chaotic mark, he could not be compared to the previous artifact spirit. This was one of the important reasons why he didn't want to call himself Supreme Purple Spirit in front of Yuhauran. At the same time, this was the real reason why he wanted to get the chaotic spiritual chi from the primordial crystals. Alright, I don't have time to waste on you, so you'd better stay where you are and don't disturb my conversation with Yuhauran. The blood-hollow beast, whose murderous aura had disappeared, flew toward Yuhauran again and waved its claws impatiently. The blood void beast chased him away impatiently, which immediately triggered Thaling's unwillingness to admit defeat. Thaling directly mobilized the Spacetime Victor in his knowledge sea. He intended to let the other party see his terrifying means and let him know that he, who had nurtured a new artifact spirit, was still not an existence that he could easily despise. However, Yuhauran suddenly stood in front of him with a pleading look in his eyes. "Blood foe beast, on account of Yuhauran, I will let you off for now." In the face of Yuhauran's pleading look, Faling thought of the sacrifices that Yuhauran had made for him. Although he forcibly suppressed his unwillingness to admit defeat, he still challenged him with an indignant expression. "When Yuhauran gathers all the scattered fragments of the space-time rules of order, we will definitely have a bloody battle to the death." "Sure. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" The blood-hollow beast, who had returned to Yuhauran's shoulder, also refused to back down. "Just you wait." The pagoda genie returned to Yuhauran's sea of consciousness. "Blood-hollow beast, with your ability to manipulate the energy of the space-time rules of order, how did you end up guarding the door of the Blue Dragon clan's treasury?" Yuhauran secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Faling and the blood-hollow beast had temporarily put aside their deep hatred for each other through the means of a battle. Subsequently, he couldn't help but ask the question that had emerged in his heart as he looked for the gap that Faling could break through the defense array of the treasury. Sigh. Hearing Yuhauran ask about the pain in his heart, the blood-hollow beast couldn't help but sigh and explain with a complicated expression. "Yuhauran, the reason why I looked down on the new artifact spirit of the space-time domain tower is not because I, the blood-void beast, am arrogant and conceited. Instead, it's because the difference between the two artifact spirits is too great. The first weapon spirit that was born by the space-time victor had a godly soul body that was built from the chaotic essence at the beginning of the world. It had at least a 50% chance of breaking through to the immortal realm. The current weapon spirit's godly soul body was built from the innate spiritual energy, so the chance of breaking through to the immortal realm was less than 1 in 10,000. When I first crossed swords with the first weapon spirit, it was already at the peak of the immortal realm. Even if the current weapon spirit fully recovered from its injuries, the highest cultivation level of the peak of the 9th grade sovereign realm was the cultivation level. Therefore, it's not an exaggeration to say that the gap between them was like heaven and earth. Although the blood-hollow beast's explanation had nothing to do with him being reduced to guarding the door of the treasury, Yuhauran was most interested in this kind of ancient secret that wasn't recorded in the Destiny Stone tablet. Therefore, he didn't interrupt the blood-hollow beast's explanation. "Although I had just broken through to the immortal realm when I crossed swords with the first weapon spirit of the space-time victor, I still managed to gain the upper hand with my exquisite use of the space rules of energy." The blood-hollow beast turned its head to look at Yuhauran's forehead and continued with a hint of helplessness in its eyes. "Actually, I didn't covet all the space rules of energy in the space-time victor. At first, I only wanted a small part of it from Supreme Violet Spirit to consolidate my newly broken through to the immortal realm. But what I didn't expect was that Supreme Violet Spirit was so hot-blooded that he directly detonated his god soul body with the chaotic spiritual energy foundation when he was gradually losing the upper hand. Although my fighting strength was slightly higher than Supreme Violet Spirit's, the quality and cultivation level of my god soul were far inferior to his. In the end, his god soul was destroyed, and my ending wasn't good either. The self-destruction of Supreme Violet Spirit's godly soul not only destroyed the foundation of the half-tribulation immortal realm, but also made me unable to absorb the blood origin and the space law's energy to heal myself. Even my body and godly soul are in a state of fragmentation. If Supreme Blue Dragon hadn't found me in time and used his essence blood to help me consolidate my body and god soul, if it wasn't for Sovereign Azure Dragon, Sovereign White Tiger, Sovereign Vermilion Bird and Sovereign Black Tortoise setting up a formation that could gather the energy of the laws of space, helping me maintain my cultivation at the Sovereign Realm, I'm afraid that I would have long since died from the explosion of Sovereign Violet Spirit's soul. Chapter 1950. In the encampment of the Blue Dragon clan, in front of the treasure vault on the 3rd floor, Yuhauran quickly asked the Blood Void Beast if there is a large amount of connate 5 elemental crystals sealed under the mountain range where the Blue Dragon clan is located. Detonating one's spirit body meant complete death. As a result, the tower spirit, who had inherited all of the previous artifact spirit's memories, had no idea how the Blood Void Beast had managed to avoid the power of the spirit body's self-detonation, nor did he know how he had ended up guarding someone's treasury. Therefore, when he heard Yuhauran asking about the doubts in his heart, Thaling quickly calmed down and listened attentively to the Blood Void Beast's explanation. When he heard that the Blood Void Beast had been using the energy of the rules of space to maintain the ancient appearance of this mountain range, a memory suddenly flashed across his mind, and he quickly reminded Yuhauran. Yuhauran had experienced the ability of the connate 5 elemental crystals to transform chaotic spiritual energy. He also knew that chaotic spiritual energy was one of the few things that could help him break through to the supreme martial artist realm in a short period of time. Therefore, when he heard Thaling's reminder, his eyes were filled with anticipation as he immediately asked, "Blood Void Beast, is there a large amount of connate 5 elemental crystals stored in the mountain range under our feet?" "No." However, the Blood Void Beast's following answer caused Yuhauran and Thaling's anticipation to be instantly replaced by disappointment. Just a month ago, a peak 7th grade supreme martial artist ancestor of the Blue Dragon clan secretly returned to this mountain range and took away all the connate crystals under the mountain range, as well as 99 talented elite clansmen. Although Yuhauran was extremely disappointed to lose the connate crystals that could transform chaotic spiritual energy, compared to the shocking secret revealed by the Blood Void Beast, the loss of the connate crystals did not seem that important. The peak 7th grade supreme martial artist ancestor, who had returned for a short period of time, and 99 talented elite clansmen who had been taken away. What exactly did the supreme martial artist ancestors of the Blue Dragon clan want to do? What kind of earth-shattering schemes and plans did they have? Yuhauran couldn't help but frown as he couldn't figure it out. Upon seeing Yuhauran frowning, a hint of hesitation flashed across the Blood Void Beast's tiny eyes. As a one-tribulation immortal expert, there were very few secrets in this world that could be hidden from him. Therefore, the Blood Void Beast also knew that it could use a special formation to convert innate 5 elemental crystals into pure chaos spiritual energy. As a powerful being that had existed since the beginning of the world, the Voidblood Beast's understanding of chaotic spiritual energy was not inferior to that of the Thaling Beast. Therefore, during the countless years he had been suppressing this mountain range, he had been using the chaotic spiritual energy transformed from natural crystals to secretly repair his body and soul that had been severely damaged. Otherwise, with the cautious style of the Blue Dragon clan and the defensive measures he had secretly set up, how could he allow him to recover to the peak 9th grade supreme martial artist level that was enough to threaten the safety of the Blue Dragon clan? It was also because of the vigilance of the Blue Dragon clan that the Blood Void Beast consciously collected innate crystals in secret. Therefore, he had stored hundreds of innate crystals that he had secretly collected for countless years in the independent space that he had opened up. However, these hundreds of innate crystals were part of the hope for his body and soul to return to the one tribulation immortal realm. He was really reluctant to give them away. However, if he wanted to truly return to the one tribulation immortal realm, or even continue to break through to the 2 tribulation or 3 tribulation immortal realm, he had to rely on a large amount of space rule energy to rebuild his foundation for breaking through to the one tribulation immortal realm. In this case, Yuhauran had to be willing to contribute a large amount of space rule energy when he gathered all the fragments of space rule energy. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons and considering Yuhauran's cultivation and strength, the Blood Void Beast finally reluctantly took out 20 innate crystals of 5 elements. Since he could not figure out the conspiracy of the Blue Dragon clan, Yuhauran could only temporarily give up on wasting his energy. He planned to enter the treasury through the gap in the defensive formation and obtain the treasures that the Blue Dragon clan had accumulated for countless years. However, at this moment, he saw the 20 innate crystals of 5 elements that the Blood Void Beast took out, and its face was full of reluctance. Blood Void Beast, thank you. He had only cooperated with the Blood Void Beast temporarily because of the deal, and there was no deep relationship between them. Therefore, Yuhauran ignored the Blood Void Beast's reluctance. After cupping his hands and thanking it, he immediately put the 20 innate crystals of 5 elements into the space in his sea of consciousness with joy. Yuhauran, give me half of the innate crystals of 5 elements. With the chaotic spiritual chi transformed by 10 innate crystals of 5 elements, not only could it completely heal the injuries of the divine soul body, but it could also completely restore the spacetime victor. Therefore, after receiving the innate crystals of 5 elements from Yuhauran, Thaling immediately asked eagerly, "No problem." After entering the treasury through the gap in the defensive formation, Yuhauran nodded in agreement without hesitation. This is. After entering the treasury through the gap in the defensive formation, Yuhauran was completely stunned by the scene in front of him. In the nearly 100,000 square meter hall on the first floor, there were more than 10,000 spiritual veins of lower, middle, and upper level 5 spiritual veins, more than 1,000 spiritual veins of lower, middle, and upper level 4 spiritual veins, more than 100 spiritual veins of lower, middle, and upper level 3 spiritual veins, and 13 spiritual veins of lower, middle, and upper level 2 spiritual veins. With the quantity and quality of the spiritual veins in the hall, he was confident that he could completely turn the mountain where the 100 Chi Gate was located into a unique cultivation paradise in the Tianxian continent, even without the lower level 1 holy vein as the foundation of the formation. Moreover, there were more than 100 open wooden boxes on the wooden shelves to the right of the upper grade Class 2 spiritual vein. Each of the boxes contained godstones ranging from Class 1 to Class 9. Just the number of deity stones stored in over 100 wooden chests was not inferior to a Tier 1 deity vein in terms of value and usefulness. Therefore, he was very indifferent about whether or not he should take the risk to steal the divine veins under the mountain range. Of course, in addition to a large number of top spiritual veins and spiritual stones, there were at least 100,000 elixir bottles, millions of special wooden and jade boxes, piles of top refining materials, and some other kinds of rare treasures in the hall on the first floor. Thaling, time is running out, and there is no time to check carefully. You can directly put them in the victor's space. Although he wanted to check the types and grades of the elixirs in each elixir bottle, and the origin and quality of the herbs in each box, he was afraid that it would take at least 2 to 3 months to check everything clearly. Not to mention that he did not have so much time now. Even if he did, he would not waste his precious time on such things. Chapter 1951. In the Blue Dragon clan's encampment, on the first floor of the treasury. After Thaling had stored all the treasures in the first floor of the treasury into the victor, Yuhauran immediately used his divine telekinesis to scan the entire hall. Finally, in the east corner of the hall, he found the entrance to the second floor of the treasury. Using the power of the law of space, he instantly reached the east corner of the hall. Yuhauran could not help but shake his head with a bitter smile as he looked at the teleportation formation that had been set up using dozens of space crystals and the top-notch defensive formation outside the teleportation formation. Whether it was activating the teleportation formation or breaking the defensive formation's defenses, it was not something that he could easily do in a short period of time. Helpless, he could only continue to let Thaling do the work. However, just as he was about to instruct Thaling in his sea of consciousness to make a move, the blood void beast on his shoulder suddenly reminded him. Yu Haoran, among the tens of thousands of powers of law in the Tianxian continent, the law of space is ranked third because of its unparalleled speed and attacks that are impossible to defend against, as well as its ability to freely travel through the endless void without any obstacles. At this point, the blood void beast extended its tiny claws and transmitted a trace of the essence of the law of space into his mind. When you have completely grasped the essence of this trace of the law of space, you will truly understand the power of the law of space. Sensing the profoundness of the essence of the law of space that the blood void beast had imparted to him, Yu Haoran immediately sat down with his legs crossed. He then took out the Bodhi seed that he had obtained from Zhenyuan's grave to help him understand the essence of the law of space. A look of satisfaction flashed across Thaling's eyes as he looked at the blood void beast. It took him almost half an hour to barely grasp the essence of the law of space that the blood void beast had imparted to him. After finishing his work, Yu Haoran ignored the defensive formation and the teleportation formation in front of him. Instead, he reached out and tore the space above his head. Pft! With a piercing tearing sound, Yu Haoran easily tore a gap in the space of the treasury that had been stabilized by the formation. Then, he stepped into the gap in space. Just as I thought. When Yu Haoran looked at the hall, which had an area of close to 50,000 square meters, as well as at least 100,000 divine weapons, which were emitting dazzling light, he knew that his comprehension of the spatial laws had already reached the great perfection realm. He could now reach any place he wanted to go by locking onto his aura and tearing through the void. If he could completely grasp the essence of the law of space that the blood void beast had imparted to him, his comprehension of the law of space would reach the pinnacle and he would be able to control it at will. Blood void beast, thank you. If the blood void beast had not given him a trace of the essence of the law of space, it would have taken him at least 3 to 5 years to comprehend the law of space to the greater mastery stage. Blood void beasts, the blood void beast was space. He, of the blood of the void beasts, of the divine blood void beast, thank you. Yu Haoran, I will help you improve your understanding of the law of space as soon as possible. That's what we agreed on, so you don't have to be so polite. Although the blood void beast pretended not to care about Yu Haoran's sincere gratitude, the glint of joy in its small eyes showed that it cared about Yu Haoran's attitude. Yu Haoran's eyes flashed with excitement when he looked at the 100,000 weapons in front of him again and discovered that most of them were venerables, emperors, and deities. Although he had already promised Thaling that he would use the Rui bell that he had painstakingly refined as a carrier for the Bell of Chaos to be reborn, and that he had successfully integrated 6 marks of chaos into it, the Rui bell was still his strongest defensive treasure before he gathered all the marks of chaos. At the same time, the mark of chaos that had fallen into the hands of the Void Mirror indicated that it was impossible to gather the remaining 3 marks of chaos in a short period of time. Therefore, he still needed to use a special secret method to continue improving the grade of the Rui bell. Based on the number and grade of the weapons in front of him, it was enough to upgrade the Rui bell to the supreme level in a short period of time. This would also give him more confidence to face the large number of supreme-level experts that were about to return. However, he did not want to waste too much time and reminded Thaling. Thaling, I'll have to trouble you to keep these weapons in the Victor space. Sure. Thaling, who was sorting out the loot on the first level of the treasury, nodded in response. He immediately mobilized the divine sense of a peak 3rd grade supreme and began to envelop all the weapons in the hall on the 2nd level of the treasury. However, just as he was about to move all the weapons, 13 special weapons suddenly erupted with unimaginable power. Not only did they break free from the envelopment of Thaling's divine sense, but they also flew into the air, intending to escape from the 2nd level of the treasury. Trying to escape. Stay here. Seeing that the 13 special weapons had broken through the space on the 2nd level of the treasury and were intending to escape, Yu Haoran, the blood void beast, and Thaling moved at the same time to intercept them. Yuhauran used the space-sealing nomological martial technique that he had accidentally mastered when he was comprehending the essence of the law of space just now. He immediately locked onto the 4 weapons that had the weakest explosive power. Using the remaining energy of the law of space, he directly imprisoned the weapon spirits hidden in the weapons. The Blood Void Beast directly trapped the 5 weapons that had the strongest explosive power. He mobilized the chaotic imprint in the spacetime victor and suppressed the remaining 4 weapons with the aura of a connate cardinal treasure. Finally, in less than a second, the 13 special weapons that had intended to escape all fell obediently in front of Yuhauran. Yuhauran bent down and picked up a saber-shaped weapon that he had locked onto using the space-sealing nomological martial technique. He carefully inspected it and realized that the saber in his hand was not a connate-level weapon. Then, he directly mobilized his powerful divine sense and penetrated it into the weapon. Finally, he saw a middle-aged man in a blood-red robe, with a sinister aura, at the core of the saber. "Tell me about your background." Without much guessing, Yuhauran knew that the sinister middle-aged man, whose cultivation had reached the peak of 7th grade martial god, was the weapon spirit of this saber weapon. It was also under the control of this weapon spirit that the saber weapon had finally broken free from Thaling's divine sense. "Brat, you're courting death." Chapter 1952. Within the Blue Dragon clan's encampment, on the 2nd floor of the treasury, a firefly dares to compete with the light of the sun and the moon. Yuhauran commented in disdain when he saw the sinister middle-aged man who had transformed into a long saber actually take the initiative to attack him. He then stretched out his hand and pointed at the long saber that was coming at him. An energy that transcended time and space shot directly at the saber. Then, the weapon spirit that had transformed into the saber seemed to be frozen in mid-air. Yuhauran said with a cold smile as he appeared in front of the saber that had been sealed by the spatial law martial technique. "I've already given you a chance to live, but you don't know how to cherish it. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being ruthless." Yuhauran pressed his right hand on the saber and used the soul-searching secret technique from the Destiny Stone Tablet's memory inheritance that was specially used to search for weapon spirits' memories. "So it's the natal weapon of a god-ranked assassin from the ancient era." 10 seconds later, Yuhauran withdrew his right hand from the saber and calmly controlled his divine sense to leave the weapon space. He casually put the saber into his storage ring and looked at the second weapon. It was a sword that emitted a fierce, murderous aura. His powerful divine sense continued to force its way into the sword, and at the same time, he saw a peerlessly beautiful woman in a white dress at the core of the sword. "Introduce yourself," Yuhauran ordered with an indifferent expression, as if he was talking to the device spirit of the long saber magic tool. "Rainbow Sword, the natal weapon of Fairy Xingyun of the Sunset Peak of the Sword Dao sect in the ancient era. It came from the hands of the number 1 weapon refiner in the ancient era, Yuan Hua." Compared to the weapon spirit's reckless provocation, the weapon spirit of the sword introduced itself very obediently. "Submit or die." Although the level of weapon refinery in the ancient era was far higher than in the Tianxian continent, the difference between the two was like heaven and earth compared to the weapon refinery in the ancient era. Not to mention the innate spiritual treasures that were born at the beginning of the world. Therefore, although the rainbow sword had reached the god realm upper tier, in Yuhauran's eyes, it was only worthy of being the energy for the Rui Bell to upgrade or a reward for his subordinates. "I choose to submit." Although the cultivation of the young man formed by his divine sense was only at the peak of rank 9 martial emperor, the exceptional woman was able to tell that he possessed the confidence to easily kill her. Thus, without the slightest hesitation, she chose to submit. After putting away the woman's soul origin that she had offered, Yuhauran's divine sense quickly withdrew from the sword space. He then put the rainbow sword into the victor space and looked at the third weapon. It was a sword that emitted a fierce, murderous aura. Yuhauran, wait! Just as Yuhauran's divine thought was about to enter the sword space, the tower spirit's voice sounded in his mind. Fling, what's wrong? Whether it was the intensity of the murderous aura or the feeling of the sword itself, the dark green sword in front of him couldn't be compared to the rainbow sword. Therefore, Yuhauran didn't understand why Fling stopped him from using his divine sense. Yuhauran, before your divine sense goes through the baptism of the god's tribulation lightning and before you have the strength of a martial artist, you can't enter the sword space in front of you. Fling replied calmly. Why? Fling's reply made Yuhauran even more confused. Because the green sword in front of you is called the Qingyun sword. It is an innate spiritual treasure sword that combines wind, water, fire, wind, and illusion. Its grade is comparable to a sword at the peak of the god realm. Among the tens of thousands of innate spiritual treasures at the beginning of the world, its attack power was ranked 36. At this point, Fling directly mobilized the divine sense of a peak third-grade sovereign and forced it into the sword space of the Qingyun sword. Not long after, when Fling's divine sense left the Qingyun sword, a 24-feet-tall middle-aged man with a face like a crab and a beard like copper wire slowly appeared on the Qingyun sword. Yuhauran. Since the Qingyun sword has the world's best illusion technique, he not only used the method of faking his death to deceive me and the Bell of Chaos during the spiritual weapon war at the beginning of the world, but also took the opportunity to steal the origin energy of hundreds of spiritual weapons. After leaving Yuhauran's consciousness, Fling pointed at the middle-aged man standing on the Qingyun sword and said with anger in his eyes, with the help of countless years of cultivation hidden in the treasury of the Blue Dragon clan and the origin energy of hundreds of spiritual weapons that he stole, he has now successfully broken through the limits of his body and his soul has advanced to the peak 5th-grade sovereign realm. After hearing Fling's introduction of the Qingyun sword's sword spirit, Yuhauran's face couldn't help but change, and a few drops of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. If Fling hadn't stopped him in time, the divine sense that had forcefully entered the Qingyun sword would have been destroyed by the sword spirit, who was proficient in the best illusion technique and was at the peak 5th-grade sovereign realm. The result would not be as simple as the divine sense being destroyed. Perhaps even his experience of reincarnation, his identity as the destined child, the secrets of the Destiny Stone Tablet, the Destiny Spiritual Rat, the Blood Void Beast, the Spacetime Victor and the Bell of Chaos would be discovered by the Sword Spirit. At that time, the Sword Spirit would make use of the unpredictable illusion technique and completely control his mind through the restricted divine sense. Not only would the Sword Spirit be able to seize everything that he had, but it would also steal the 6 chaotic marks that were integrated into the Rui Bell, thus achieving the transformation of the innate spiritual treasure. In the worst case, the Sword Spirit would make use of Fling's trust in him and use special means to steal the 32 chaotic marks in the Spacetime Victor, ultimately becoming the strongest innate spiritual treasure in the world. Fling, destroy him. Affected by the lingering fear, Yuhauran immediately had a strong desire to kill the Sword Spirit of the Qingyun sword. He pointed at the middle-aged man standing on the Qingyun sword and ordered Fling with a fierce expression. All right. If he wanted to kill the sword spirit of the Qingyun sword, Fling would have done it the moment his divine sense entered the space of the Qingyun sword. The main purpose of keeping the Qingyun sword spirit alive was to strengthen the strength of Yuhauran's family and friends, so that they could help him deal with more troubles and disasters. However, since Yuhauran was afraid of the Qingyun sword spirit's ability to use illusion techniques and did not want to keep a hidden danger by his side, Fling could not persuade him too much and nodded in agreement. Honorable Lord, please spare Qingyun's life. Although he did not know why Supreme Violet Spirit, whose name had shaken the ancient times, would listen to the orders of a human, he knew very well in his heart. If he still wanted to continue living and still wanted to achieve the transformation of his body and spirit in the future, the change in the human state in front of him was the key. Chapter 1953. In the residence of the Blue Dragon clan, on the second floor of the treasury. Faced with the pleading of the Qingyun sword spirit, Yu Haoran remained unmoved with a cold expression, as if he was determined to take his life. Supreme Violet Spirit, although you and I were enemies in the great battle of spirit artifacts at the beginning of the world, I, Qingyun, have never harmed your companions or subordinates, so I don't have too much of a deep grudge with you. Seeing that the young human in front of him had no intention of letting him go, the Qingyun sword spirit, who looked down on the other party, immediately turned to Thaling. I hope that Lord Supreme Purple Spirit can spare my life on account of the fact that you and I are both creatures born of chaos. Faced with the Qingyun sword spirit who had admitted defeat and begged for mercy, the pagoda spirit hesitated and turned to look at Yu Haoran. He was one of the few Xiantian artifact spirits who had survived several calamities. Qingyun, I'm sorry. After seeing Yu Haoran's cold expression, Thaling's eyes flashed with an apologetic look. He immediately mobilized the 32 chaos marks in his main body, the spacetime victor, and began to destroy Qingyun's spirit body bit by bit with the absolute suppression of the innate treasure's quality. Thaling's action of asking for the other party's opinion, as well as his subsequent action without the slightest hesitation, made Qingyun gradually realize the unusual relationship between Thaling and the young human in front of him. If he wanted to preserve the foundation that he had spent countless years breaking through the limits of his main body, he had to do everything possible to obtain the forgiveness of the young human in front of him. Therefore, after putting away the idea of looking down on Yu Haoran, Qingyun immediately mobilized all his strength to resist Thaling's suppression. At the same time, he knelt down and expressed his absolute submission. Lord, as long as you are willing to spare my life, I will not only swear loyalty to you by the fire of the God of Instruments, but I will also be willing to hand over a trace of my spirit body's origin. After hearing that Qingyun had chosen to submit, Yu Haoran's cold eyes immediately flashed with a hint of interest. A weapon spirit at the peak of a 5th-grade supreme martial artist, coupled with the innate spiritual treasure, Qingyun's sword, which possessed the powers of earth, water, fire, wind, and illusions, could probably exert the power of a 7th-grade supreme martial artist at the very least. If his family and friends could receive the protection and assistance of Sword Spirit Green Cloud, not only would their safety be greatly improved, but they could also help to deal with some troublesome matters. This way, he would have more time to improve his cultivation and strength. However, being moved was one thing. Considering Sword Spirit Green Cloud's unpredictable illusions, he was also worried that his friends and family would be confused by it. In the end, he decided to listen to Thaling's suggestion. Yu Haoran, if you are worried that Qingyun will use powerful illusions to deal with your friends, you can directly ask for 2 portions of the origin of spirits. 1 portion of the origin of spirits will be given to the person you want to give it to along with Qingyun's sword, and the other portion will be kept in your own hands. Seeing that Yu Haoran was finally interested in the conditions of submission proposed by Qingyun, Thaling secretly heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly told him the countermeasure that he had thought of long ago. In this way, even if Sword Spirit Green Cloud wants to use illusions to control your friends, it will have to be wary of the origin of spirits in your hands. Okay, I will listen to you. After hearing Thaling's suggestion, Yu Haoran finally decided to agree to Sword Spirit Green Cloud's conditions of submission after careful consideration. Qingyun, if you want to protect your life through the conditions of submission, besides swearing on the fire of the God of Instruments, you will also need to take out 3 portions of the origin of spirits. However, he asked for 1 more portion of the origin of spirits than Thaling's suggestion, because he wanted an extra portion of protection. The origin of spirits was not only related to the life and death of his spirit body, but also affected the strength of his own strength at the same time. One portion of the origin of spirits, apart from being able to determine the safety of his spirit body, did not have much impact on his strength. Although two portions of the origin of spirits would affect his strength to a certain extent, it was still within the range that he could accept. However, three portions of the origin of spirits would not only cause a substantial decrease in his strength, but also affect his ability to use illusions, thus completely cutting off his hopes of rising again. Therefore, in the face of Yuhauran's conditions, Sword Spirit Green Cloud appeared to be very hesitant. Thaling, do it. If Sword Spirit Green Cloud had readily agreed, Yuhauran would have been worried that the origin of spirits would not be able to truly restrain him. However, the difficulty that he was showing now was enough to prove that his cultivation had exceeded the limit of the Qingyun sword, but he still could not break free from the shackles of his spirit body. At this moment, he really wanted to obtain Sword Spirit Green Cloud's allegiance, so he immediately continued to force him through Thaling. Alright. With a little thought, he understood the reason why Yuhauran wanted an additional portion of the origin of spirits. Thaling agreed with him very much. While he was being cautious, he immediately increased the power of the suppression. Alright, I agree. The increase in the power of the suppression caused the speed of the spirit body's collapse to increase. As the speed of the spirit body's collapse increased, the fear of death in his heart grew stronger. In the end, Sword Spirit Green Cloud's strong desire for survival made him nod his head helplessly in agreement, and he took the initiative to extract the three portions of the origin of spirits. After receiving the three portions of the origin of spirits from Green Cloud, Yuhauran directly placed one of the origin of spirits into Thaling's hands and instructed with a solemn expression. Thaling, I intend to gift the Qingyun sword to Senior Brother Green Cloud, but I am not very confident that Senior Brother Green Cloud has the ability to defend against Sword Spirit Green Cloud's illusions. At the same time, I am also not confident that I can defend against Sword Spirit Green Cloud's illusions. Therefore, you are the last safeguard against Sword Spirit Green Cloud's illusions. Yuhauran, don't worry. I promise I won't let Green Cloud hurt you with his illusions, Thaling guaranteed with a solemn expression after receiving a portion of the origin of spirits from Green Cloud. After putting away the source of the remaining two souls, Yuhauran took the opportunity to put away the Qingyun sword and Sword Spirit Qingyun into an empty storage ring. Then, he looked at the fourth magic tool. It was an exquisite jade bottle that was similar to a pill bottle used to store medicinal pills, but it was slightly larger. After the experience of the Qingyun sword and Sword Spirit Green Cloud, Yuhauran, who had regained his cautious character, did not rashly use his divine sense to examine the bottle. Instead, he planned to let Thaling directly force out the artifact spirit of the jade bottle, so as to understand the true origin of the jade bottle. Yuhauran, this jade bottle is called the Four Seas Cosmos Bottle. It was created by Yun Zhongzi in the Middle Ages, and it is a high-grade magic tool used to restrain the dragon clan of the Four Seas. After glancing at the jade bottle, Thaling did not need to use his divine sense at all to recognize the true origin of the jade bottle at a glance. Chapter 1954. On the second floor of the Blue Dragon Clan's treasury. Thaling, how can the Four Seas Qianquan bottle restrain all the living beings in the Four Seas? A thought flashed through Yuhauran's mind after hearing Thaling's introduction of the jade bottle. He wanted to know more about the effects of the Four Seas Qianquan bottle. It's very simple. As long as you aim the mouth of the Four Seas Qianquan bottle at the Four Seas and use your divine power and soul power to drive it, you'll be able to suck all the living beings and seawater in the Four Seas into the bottle. The Tower Genie shrugged and replied casually, That's right. When that happens, the life and death of all the living beings trapped in the Four Seas Qianquan bottle will be up to you. Thaling, there should be a certain limit to your strength if you want to suck in all the living beings in the Four Seas. Yu Haoran asked with a slight frown. If the 4 C's Qiankuan bottle really had such a heaven-defying effect, the top powerhouses of the Middle Ages wouldn't have given up the opportunity to refine the 4 C's Qiankuan portrait as their life weapon. After all, the size and strength of the 4 C's in the Middle Ages were far greater than that of the Middle Ages. If they could use the 4 C's Qiankuan bottle to unify the 4 C's, it would only be a matter of time before they could further conquer the entire Middle Ages. But in the end, they had always maintained a non-aggression pact. It's a restraint of equal strength. Thaling continued to answer casually as he checked the 5th magic weapon that he had intended to use to escape the treasury. Sigh. After hearing Thaling's answer, Yu Haoran's infinite anticipation was instantly replaced by disappointment. He extinguished the thought that had just surfaced in his mind and couldn't help but sigh softly. He threw the 4 C's Qiankuan bottle into the storage ring that was used as the energy source for the Rui Bell's advancement. He also looked at the 5th magic weapon. Seeing Yu Haoran's casual behavior with the jade bottle, a trace of hesitation flashed across the blood-void beast's eyes. As a Xiantian creature born from the origin of blood, he could vaguely sense an extremely pure aura of life essence from the jade bottle. Although this wisp of life essence was of no use to him, it could at least assist Yu Haoran in successfully advancing his physical body to the Supreme Being realm. However, when it saw that Yu Haoran's attention was drawn to a portrait that was slowly being unfurled, the blood-void beast sighed and didn't say anything in the end. Thaling, what is this? Yu Haoran slowly opened the painting that he had just picked up. When he saw that there was only the most ordinary and simple blue sky and white clouds in the painting, he first used his divine sense to examine it carefully. After finding nothing out of the ordinary, he hurriedly checked the Destiny stone tablet's memories. After confirming that there was no record of the portrait in front of him in the memory inheritance, he could only continue to seek help from the Thaling in his sea of consciousness. He first checked the Thaling of the portrait. When he found that there was only a blue sky and white clouds in the painting, he had already used his peak 3rd grade Supreme Being divine sense to examine it from inside to outside, from the beginning of the painting to the overall layout, and from the residual aura of the brush and ink in the painting 3 times. However, the result was still fruitless. If not for the fact that this painting had the ability to break free from his divine sense and had the power to tear apart the space of the treasure trove that had been stabilized by the formation, Thaling would have even suspected that this was just an ordinary portrait. Therefore, in the face of Yu Haoran's interrogation, Thaling didn't know how to answer for a moment. When Thaling didn't reply for a long time, Yu Haoran couldn't help but frown and ask, "Thaling, what's the matter?" "Yu Haoran, forgive me for my shallow knowledge, but I really can't tell the origin of this painting and its effects." After much consideration, Thaling finally decided to tell the truth. As for the final handling of this painting, it was still up to Yu Haoran to decide. There were countless treasures in the world, and no living creature could recognize all of them. Therefore, after hearing Thaling's explanation, Yu Haoran wasn't too disappointed. Instead, when he was about to temporarily store the portrait in his hand in the Victor space, he suddenly heard the voice of the blood-void beast. "Yu Haoran, the painting in your hand was found by the Blue Dragon Supreme in a sinkhole in ancient times." Seeing that Yu Haoran had already rolled up half of the portrait, the blood-void beast frowned and reminded him. Although no one at the time could tell the origin of this painting and its effects, according to the calculations of the Black Tortoise, who was proficient in Formula Tao, this painting very likely hides a great secret between heaven and earth. At the same time, according to the Black Tortoise's calculations, when this world is about to experience the greatest calamity since the creation of the world, the immeasurable calamity that will destroy the world, a child of destiny who will be blessed by all the destinies of the ancient, middle, and recent ancient times will be born between heaven and earth. And that child of destiny will be able to use his own destiny aura to unlock the shocking secret hidden in this painting. Therefore, this is an important reason why the Blue Dragon Supreme left behind this painting when he went to the endless void. At this point, the blood void beast couldn't help but sigh softly, and its tone was somewhat melancholy. Unfortunately, the 29,999th patriarchs of the Blue Dragon Clan, the White Tiger Clan, the Vermilion Bird Clan, and the Black Tortoise Clan all died at the same time during the recent ancient times. As a result, the 4 Guardian clans have long forgotten about the existence of this painting. Otherwise, they would have been able to get the Child of Destiny of the Yushu Temple to unlock the secret in the painting 30 years ago. After hearing the Blood Void Beast's description of the painting and the Black Tortoise's calculations, Yu Haoran's expression didn't change at all, but the shock in his heart was like a tempestuous wave. Thaling, who was also incredibly shocked, immediately urged Yu Haoran to hurry up and use the Destiny Aura to unlock the secret in the painting in his hand. After all, Yu Haoran's identity as the Child of Destiny wasn't a secret to his family, so it didn't matter if the Blood Void Beast knew about it beforehand. Alright. Yu Haoran, who was also anxious to know the secret in the painting, immediately activated the Destiny Aura in his heart when he heard Thaling's urging. But just as he was about to guide the Destiny Aura out of his heart, 4 names suddenly lit up at the top of the stone steel of destiny, causing him to immediately stop using the Destiny Aura to unlock the painting. Because the 4 names that had lit up on the stone steel of destiny were the Blue Dragon, the White Tiger, the Vermilion Bird, and the Black Tortoise. Yu Haoran seriously suspected that the 4 Peak Supremes had left some sort of surveillance method in the painting. Firstly, they could use this surveillance method to determine the true identity of the Child of Destiny. Chapter 1955. In the residence of the Blue Dragon Clan, on the 2nd floor of the treasure house. Yu Haoran, what's wrong with you? He had already mobilized the Aura of Fate, but at the critical moment when he was about to leave the heart space, he suddenly withdrew it. Yu Haoran's inexplicable actions just now made Thaling feel quite puzzled. The walls have ears. Yu Haoran reminded him softly as he put the rolled-up portrait into the victor's space. Understood. After thinking for a moment, Thaling knew who Yu Haoran was talking about. Therefore, he also suppressed the urge to pry into the portrait's secrets and looked at the 6th magic artifact, a long spear that emitted a dazzling silver light. Submit or die. After learning about the experience of the innate spiritual treasure Qingyun sword, Yu Haoran fell into a cautious character of once bitten twice shy. Therefore, Thaling did not wait for Yu Haoran to take the initiative to ask. He forced his powerful divine thought into the space of the long spear magic artifact and threatened the young artifact's spirit in a white robe. I choose to submit. Although the spear had an unyielding pride, it also had a soft side. Facing the artifact's spirit of the time and space victor, one of the 7 innate spiritual treasures bred by the chaos, the white-robed youth chose to submit at the first moment, whether it was respect from the bottom of his heart or oppression from the grade of the artifact's spirit. Leave the space of the main body immediately and confess everything to the person outside. After leaving the order, Thaling's divine thought quickly left the space of the magic artifact and looked directly at the 7th magic artifact, a copper coin that was used by the secular world for transactions. Thaling, is this copper coin the legendary innate spiritual treasure falling coin that can knock down all magic artifacts in the world? The silver spear was refined by a weapon refiner at the king refiner of the inferior artifact in the recent ancient times. Later, it became the natal magic weapon of a general who had been fighting on the battlefield all year round. Then, step by step, it was upgraded to a divine artifact of the upper grade of the divine realm. To Yu Haoran, who was used to seeing Xiantian artifacts, the silver spear was just like the rainbow sword. It was just a reward for his subordinate. Therefore, after casually putting away the silver spear, he also looked at the copper coin artifact. When he saw the copper coin magic tool that gave off a mysterious aura, a memory from the Destiny Stone steel flashed through his mind. He was overjoyed and excited. But before his excitement could reach its peak, it was extinguished by Thaling's cold answer. No! Thaling shook his head and explained with a look of contempt in his eyes. This is just an imitation made by Yun Zhongzi in the Middle Ages based on the innate spiritual treasure falling coin. Although it has the ability to knock down the opponent's magic artifacts, it can only be used against magic artifacts of the upper grade of the Divine Realm. With the return of the Half-Tribulation Supreme Masters and Supreme Masters in the Endless Void, the magic artifacts that they would have to face in the future would mostly be of the supreme level. In the face of the falling coin, which could not help him much, Yuhauran dealt with it in the same way as the silver spear. He would give it to his subordinates as a reward. Therefore, he casually put it into his storage ring. The next 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th magic artifacts were all imitations of innate spiritual treasures made by Yun Zhongzi in the Middle Ages. They were also not of much help to him. Therefore, the 5 magic artifacts were dealt with in the same way as the silver spear and the falling coin. After staring at the last magic artifact for nearly a minute, Thaling did not use his divine thought to enter the space of the magic artifact to find the whereabouts of the artifact's spirit. Instead, he looked like he was recalling something. Yuhauran, who had put away the 12th ordinary magic artifact, also looked at the last magic artifact. It was a futon that warriors usually used to sit cross-legged for cultivation. A trace of doubt flashed in his eyes, because the seemingly ordinary futon in front of him vaguely gave him a very familiar feeling, as if it was a treasure that he had used before. But after thinking about it several times, he could not remember when he had used the futon in front of him. Yuhauran, sit cross-legged on the futon and use the nothingness pill condensation technique to refine an elixir that you are good at. When his eyes came back to reality, Thaling, who probably knew the origin of the futon in front of him, ordered with a trace of expectation. Okay. Yuhauran also wanted to know why the futon in front of him gave him a familiar feeling. After hearing Thaling's order, he did not hesitate and walked to the front of the futon, then sat cross-legged on it. And when Yuhauran's 10 fingers started to form the imprint of the nothingness pill condensation technique, the originally ordinary futon suddenly emitted a rich green light. The green light did not seem very powerful, but it directly pushed the blood illusion beast, who was standing on Yuhauran's shoulder, to the side. This made the blood illusion beast's expression change. Since ancient times, the blood illusion beast had been guarding the treasure vault of the Blue Dragon clan, and was very familiar with every magic artifact in the vault. Except for the portrait that required the aura of the Son of Destiny to open, the blood illusion beast knew the grade and origin of every magic artifact in the vault, as well as whether it had a complete artifact spirit, and so on. The green futon in front of him was accidentally dropped by a peak 7th grade supreme martial artist of the Blue Dragon clan during the Middle Ages when he was carrying a copper coffin into the 3rd level of the vault. After experiencing it personally, he realized that the green futon did not have any other use other than helping warriors below the level of Emperor Wu to calm their mind during cultivation. This was also the reason why the green futon had been thrown in the corner of the 2nd level of the vault. But what he did not expect was that the seemingly ordinary green futon actually hid a power that could shake him, a peak 9th grade supreme martial artist. This made the blood illusion beast extremely interested in the origin of the green futon. The realm-breaking elixir was a level 2 grade 1 elixir used to help Emperor Wu break through a small level. This was also the elixir that Yuhauran prepared to refine using the nothingness pill condensation technique. The independent space where the elixir fire was condensed, the spiritual liquid was condensed, the nourishment after the elixir was split, and the final 9 elixirs were harvested. Looking at the 9 glittering and translucent realm-breaking elixirs, which had reached the peak of level 2 grade 1, Yuhaoran could not help but fall into deep thought. The refinement this time was very different from before. Regardless of whether it was the speed of condensing the elixir fire, the speed of refining the herbs, or the speed of condensing the elixir and the nourishment of the elixir, it was at least 3 times faster than before. It had not been long since he broke through to the pill god realm. During this period of time, he did not calm down to refine elixirs, so his alchemy skills did not improve much. Chapter 1956. Within the encampment of the Blue Dragon clan, on the second level of the treasure vault. Thaling, is the green futon beneath me a treasure that Laozi used to meditate during the Middle Ages? Based on the feeling he had when he was refining the breakthrough pill and the seemingly strange instructions from Thaling, Yuhaoran could roughly guess the origin of the green futon. However, he still needed confirmation from Thaling. That's right. At the same time, Thaling also noticed the difference in Yuhaoran's state of mind when he was refining the pill. While nodding his head to confirm, his eyes revealed a trace of joy and anticipation as he continued to explain. Yuhaoran, due to our different interests in cultivation, I didn't have much contact with Laozi during the Middle Ages. However, for the sake of Heavenly Grandmaster and the weapon spirits of a few pre-world spiritual treasures, I went to the Great Void Sect 9 times to request Laozi to refine pills for me. Every time Laozi helped me to refine the pills I needed, he would sit cross-legged on the green futon beneath you. And every time, regardless of whether it was a rank 1 or a rank 1 divine pill, or a supreme holy pill that surpassed rank 1, he would successfully refine them in the end. At that time, I thought that the reason why his success rate was so high was because of his powerful pill cultivation ability and the pre-world spiritual treasure, the cauldron of heaven and earth. However, looking at it now, I'm afraid that it has a lot to do with this green futon. After listening to Thaling's further explanation, Yuhaoran was pleasantly surprised. At the same time, a strange idea suddenly flashed across his mind. Although this idea seemed very risky, it was still worth the risk compared to obtaining the secret of the green futon. Thinking of this, Yuhaoran made up his mind. After leaving the green futon, he used the elixir condensation technique to condense his dantian fire to envelop the green futon. Then, using the method of refining medicinal herbs, he started to burn the green futon with all his might. Who is this fellow Taoist who is joking with me? Just as the dantian flame began to burn the green praying mat, a gentle and benevolent voice suddenly sounded from within the green praying mat. Accompanied by a gentle and benevolent voice, a benevolent old man with a long beard and snow-white hair, wearing a robe embroidered with yin and yang patterns, slowly emerged from the thin green ball. The phantom of Laozi Supreme. When it saw the white-haired old man emerging from the thin green clump, the face of the tower spirit within Yuhaoran's sea of wisdom changed. Immediately, it brought its main body, the spacetime domain tower, to appear before Yuhaoran. The blood-void beast immediately left Yuhaoran's shoulder and prepared to attack. It then looked at the white-haired old man with vigilance. So its fellow Taoist violet spirit. After seeing Thaling standing in front of Yuhaoran, the white-haired old man greeted him with a warm smile. Violet spirit greets fellow Taoist Li. Thaling's expression was cold as he cupped his hands in greeting. A blood-void beast that can use the energy of the rules of space and has a one-tribulation immortal foundation. Laozi Supreme shifted his gaze from Thaling to the blood-void beast. A trace of surprise flashed through his eyes, but he immediately cupped his hands in greeting with a proper attitude. Li Er greets Senior Bloodvoid. Fellow Taoist Li, you're too polite. I'm no longer your senior. The blood-void beast didn't dare to neglect Laozi's solemn greeting and hurriedly returned the greeting. As an innate spiritual beast born from the origin of blood, the blood-void beast's ability to sense power was far stronger than Thaling's. Although Laozi Supreme was only a phantom in front of him, he could vaguely sense a fatal danger from it. He had only sensed this fatal danger from the weapon spirit of the Bell of Chaos, the ancient emperors of the god and demon clans, the ancient emperor of the underworld, and Blue Dragon Supreme. The 5 of them had already broken through the 1 tribulation immortal shackles and reached the 2 tribulation immortal saint level. Lousy Supreme's gaze returned to Thaling and then directly looked past Thaling to Yuhauran. His eyes immediately revealed a look of shock and joy. However, as a half-tribulation immortal peak expert who had broken through the supremacy shackles, Lousy Supreme's strong mental state cultivation allowed him to quickly recover from his shock and calm down. He then nodded and praised as a strict teacher. "Not bad. Your void condensing pill has reached the 2nd level, and your alchemy cultivation has also successfully reached the pill god level. Young man, as the successor of my alchemy inheritance, I'm very pleased with your performance." Although Yuhauran did not immediately refute Lousy Supreme's praise, a trace of displeasure flashed in his eyes. It was enough to show that he did not agree with Lousy Supreme's identity as a strict teacher. Although the pill condensation art of nothingness had played a huge role in helping him advance to the pill god realm, the secret art of the pill condensation art was something he had risked his life to obtain from Miao Tsangxue, who was at the peak of the 9th grade martial saint realm. It was not a generation-skipping inheritance that Lousy had mentioned. At the same time, he had obtained the Qi-transforming 3 Pure Ones cultivation method from a cave residence left by a martial emperor expert in his previous life. It had nothing to do with Lousy Supreme's inheritance. As a half-tribulation immortal saint-level expert who even the Blood Void Beast was afraid of, Lousy Supreme could certainly see the displeasure in Yuhauran's eyes. However, he did not care at all and said with a gentle smile on his face, "Disciple, the reason why I could become the top alchemist in the Middle Ancient Times was not only because of the void condensing pill, but also because of the assistance of 2 treasures. The first treasure was the innate spiritual treasure, the furnace of heaven and earth, which was bred by the chaos at the beginning of the world. The furnace of heaven and earth could not only refine herbs and solidify elixirs, but also the fire of chaos in the furnace could improve the quality and grade of the elixirs. Unfortunately, in the face of the great calamity in the Middle Ancient Times, I could only take the furnace of heaven and earth to the endless void. I can't give it to you as a gift." Humph. Hearing Lousy Supreme's hypocritical promise to give him the furnace of heaven and earth, Yuhauran could not help but snort coldly. His disgust for Lousy grew stronger and stronger. The second treasure was the top spiritual item, the green vine, which was bred by the heaven and earth in the Middle Ancient Times. It was refined by Yun Zhongzi and me into a green futon. Pretending that he did not hear Yuhauran's dissatisfied snort, Lousy Supreme pointed at the green futon under his feet and continued to speak with a gentle smile. The green vine, which was bred by the heaven and earth, could not only eliminate the influence of an alchemist's impetuous emotions, but also allow an alchemist to concentrate on refining elixirs. Moreover, the innate spiritual qi in the green vine could increase the speed and success rate of refining elixirs. At this point, Lousy Supreme reached out and sucked up the green futon under his feet. Then, he wrapped it with his divine thought and sent it to Yuhauran. Chapter 1957. Within the Blue Dragon clan's encampment, on the 2nd floor of the treasury. Fellowly, I thank you on behalf of Hauran for your gift. Seeing the green praying mat pass by him, Thaling turned around and grabbed the green praying mat before Yuhauran could reach out his hand. Then, he smiled and thanked Yuhauran on behalf of Yuhauran. Regarding this, a trace of disappointment flashed across Lousy's eyes. However, the disappointment disappeared in an instant. Then, he raised his head and glanced at the 3rd floor of the treasury. A complicated look flashed across his eyes. After that, He retracted his gaze from the third floor of the treasury and looked at Howren, who was standing behind Thaling again. He reminded him with a serious expression. Disciple, following the crisis of the 4 great guardian clans being exterminated, a portion of the Supremes who were supposed to return to the profound sky continent after a year will return in 3 to 5 months. Therefore, during this period of time, you should try to avoid participating in the disputes of the profound sky continent as much as possible and focus on increasing your cultivation and strength. Thank you for your reminder, Fellowly. I will supervise Howren's cultivation and ensure that he will not be affected by the disputes of the profound sky continent. Afraid that the sharp-tongued Howren would say something that would anger Laozi, Thaling hurriedly agreed on his behalf. Fellow Violet Spirit, these are some of my cultivation insights on martial arts and alchemy. I hope they can help my disciple. Thaling's action of helping Howren in all aspects without causing any disgust from Howren. This made Laozi feel a trace of envy and jealousy. This was because the Child of Destiny, who had the help of the Destiny Stone Tablet and the Destiny Calamity Spirit Rat, would play a decisive role in the fight for the immortal opportunity. If he could obtain the selfless help of the Child of Destiny, then the plan that he had planned for countless years to break through to the immortal realm would have at least a 70% chance of success. Therefore, when he saw the Thaling who had accepted the Cultivation Comprehension Jade Scroll for Howren, Supreme Laozi decided to bring forward the time of his return to the profound sky continent. Then, he would use the means of guiding martial arts and alchemy cultivation to eliminate the hostility in the other party's heart, and cultivate a deep master-disciple relationship with all his might. Thinking of this, Laozi knew that he couldn't leave his virtual image any longer. Otherwise, it would only increase Howren's disgust and fear of him. Since Laozi had already decided to leave, he did not hesitate at all. He cupped his hands and bade farewell to the Blood Void Beast and Thaling. Senior Blood Void, fellow Taoist Violet Spirit, farewell. Fellow Taoistly, take care. Fellow Taoistly, I won't see you off. The Blood Void Beast and Thaling hurriedly replied. As the shadow gradually dimmed, Laozi raised his head and looked at Howren with an indifferent expression, reminding him with his last thought. Disciple, do not go to the 3rd floor of the treasury. Not only are there no treasures there, but there are hidden dangers that even the Blood Void Beast and Violet Spirit cannot deal with. If the person who reminded him was Thaling or other Supremes, Howren would definitely consider it seriously and turn around to leave the treasury of the Blue Dragon clan. However, the person who reminded him was Laozi, someone who made him feel extremely displeased and disgusted. The rebellious feeling in his heart made him immediately use the power of the law of space to open a passage to the 3rd level of the treasury the moment the silhouette of Supreme Laozi disappeared. He then called out to the Blood Void Beast and the Tower Spirit to enter the 3rd level of the treasury. Compared to the countless rare treasures on the 1st and 2nd floor of the treasury, the 3rd floor of the treasury was almost 30,000 square meters in size, but there was not a single treasure. There was only an old bronze coffin placed in the center of the hall. Blood Void Beast, is there a corpse in this bronze coffin? Howren asked the Blood Void Beast on his shoulder as he walked towards the bronze coffin in the center of the hall. After all, from the introduction of the mysterious portrait, he already knew that the dishonest Blood Void Beast had already checked all the treasures in the treasury countless times. Howren, why are you here? Due to the influence of Laozi's terrifying strength, the Blood Void Beast had been in a daze, so it did not notice that Howren had used the power of the laws of space to enter the 3rd floor of the treasury. It was only when Howren took the initiative to question it and saw the bronze coffin that had once brought it endless fear that it finally snapped out of its daze and cried out involuntarily. Blood Void Beast, this is the 3rd floor of the treasury. It is also my objective for infiltrating the Blue Dragon clan this time. Why can't I come here? The sudden change in the Blood Void Beast's expression reminded Howren of Laozi's virtual image's warning, and he immediately asked anxiously, "Quick, tear open the space barrier of the third floor of the treasury and leave this place quickly." The blood-void beast knew that its carelessness had caused Yuhauran to recklessly enter this dangerous place. Therefore, it did not have time to complain about Yuhauran's rashness. It quickly ordered Yuhauran, "Because that bronze coffin is suppressing a terrifying expert that no one can kill easily." Yuhauran knew that Laozi's virtual image had not deceived him. Since the blood-void beast, who was once at the one tribulation immortal realm, was in such a panic, the third floor of the treasury was indeed extremely dangerous. Therefore, without any hesitation, he immediately used the space travel marshal technique with the power of the laws of space, intending to reopen the space tunnel to the second floor of the treasury. Bang! However, when the energy formed by the space travel marshal technique touched the space barrier, the barrier suddenly became many times stronger and the energy of the space travel marshal technique was repelled. Without any panic, Yuhauran continued to use the space travel marshal technique with the power of the laws of space, intending to break the void at the top of the third floor of the treasury and leave. However, the energy formed by the space travel marshal technique was repelled by the void barrier as well. Bang, bang, bang! At the same time, deafening crashing sounds suddenly came from the bronze coffin that had been lying quietly in the middle of the hall. Along with the deafening crashing sounds, not only did the treasury beneath Yuhauran's feet begin to shake, but even the mountain range where the Blue Dragon clan was located began to shake violently. This immediately alerted the two parties who were fighting each other. "Oh no, someone has alerted the forbidden existence on the third floor of the treasury." In the void above the mountain range, a peak third tribulation supreme expert of the Blue Dragon clan used his divine thought to sense the source of the shaking of the mountain range. His face turned pale instantly. Subsequently, he blew up a divine weapon in his hand and forced two peak third tribulation supreme experts to retreat. Then, he lowered his head and shouted at the Blue Dragon clan, the White Tiger clan, and the people of the Vermilion Bird clan who were fighting each other in front of the clan's residence. "All clansmen below the martial god realm of the Guardian clans, immediately think of a way to get rid of your opponents and rush to the East Sea of the Black Tortoise clan with all your might." Then, he shouted at his clansmen and companions who were fighting in the void above the mountain range. Chapter 1958. In the mountain range where the Blue Dragon clan was located. Although the Heaven Alliance had gathered nearly half of the forces and experts in the Tianxian continent, compared to the Blue Dragon clan, the White Tiger clan, and the Vermilion Bird clan, the number of top experts was not much of an advantage. If it weren't for the fact that he had the consciousness to control the heavens and the support of the Spirit of Annihilation, who had reached the sovereign realm, Ji Xing, who was the leader of the Heavenly Alliance, would have wanted to retreat to the Jade Virtual Palace. After all, the Black Tortoise clan, which was known for their defense and formations, had not arrived yet. Therefore, after hearing the order to retreat from the Peak Supremacy Stage 3 of the Blue Dragon clan, a puzzled expression appeared in his eyes. "Leader, do you think we should take this opportunity to break through the defenses of the Blue Dragon clan's encampment?" Looking at the members of the Guardian clan who were retreating orderly from the mountain range, looking at the thousands of martial gods and half-tribulation supremacies who were anxiously retreating to the encampment, a second tribulation supremacy stage expert who was in charge of protecting Ji Xing's safety suggested with a strong look of greed in his eyes, "Xian Gong, didn't you hear what the Blue Dragon clan's patriarch said when he ordered us to retreat? Do you want to face a forbidden existence that even a Peak Supremacy Stage 3 of the Tribulation Supremacy Stage expert is afraid of?" How could he not understand the thoughts of the people around him who wanted to snatch the treasures that the Blue Dragon clan had accumulated for countless years? However, before truly investigating the reason why the other party suddenly retreated, Ji Xing was not willing to take the risk to attack the encampment of the Blue Dragon clan. "Leader, Do you really believe that there is a terrifying forbidden existence in the encampment of the Blue Dragon clan? The second tribulation supremacy stage expert called Xin Gong asked with a cold smile. Or, with the shrewdness of every leader of the Blue Dragon clan, would they allow a hidden danger that could endanger the life and death of the clan to exist in the encampment of the clan? Facing Xin Gong's continuous questions, Ji Xing suddenly did not know how to answer. At the same time, his unwillingness to attack the encampment of the Blue Dragon clan began to waver. Leader, what if this is a trap deliberately set by the Blue Dragon clan in order to preserve the strength of the Guardian clan? Seeing that Ji Xing's confidence had been shaken, Xin Gong's eyes flashed with contempt as he continued to remind him. When the time comes, how are you going to explain things to the three Downlords, having failed in your attack on the Protector clans? When Ji Xing, whose confidence had already been shaken, heard Xin Gong mention the three spirits of annihilation supporting him from behind, terror instantly surged in his heart. He immediately raised his head and loudly ordered his subordinates, who had already begun to withdraw. Everyone from the Heaven Alliance, listen up. All experts below the martial god realm, kill the retreating clansmen of the Guardian clans with all your might. Don't let any of them escape. All allies above the martial god realm, immediately break into the Blue Dragon clan's base and investigate the reason for their sudden retreat. After instructing the members of the Heavenly Alliance, Ji Xing turned his head and instructed the four quasi-tribulation supreme beings who did not belong to the Yushu Temple. You guys should go and help as well. Understood. The four half-tribulation supremes, who had long been unable to restrain themselves, responded excitedly. They immediately transformed into bolts of lightning and rushed toward the Blue Dragon clan's encampment. Let's temporarily retreat to the edge of the mountain range and observe the situation quietly. Looking at the top experts of the Heavenly Alliance attacking the defensive array of the Blue Dragon clan's encampment with all their might, Ji Xing could not help but sigh softly. He then turned his head and instructed the two peak martial gods of the Yushu Temple beside him. In the encampment of the Blue Dragon clan, on the third floor of the treasury, Yu Haoran asked the blood-void beast with a gloomy face as he listened to the deafening crashing sounds coming from the bronze coffin and felt the violent tremors of the entire treasury. Blood-void beast, who exactly is being suppressed in the bronze coffin? I don't know either. The blood-void beast, who was also looking at the bronze coffin with a grave expression, shook its head and replied with a reminiscing look in its eyes. Yu Haoran, this bronze coffin was brought into the third floor of the treasury by a peak 7th grade sovereign expert of the Blue Dragon clan 3,650,000 years before the great calamity of the Middle Ages. At the same time, the Black Tortoise clan's 9 Formation Divinity Realm experts and 3 Formation Divinity Realm experts will work together to cast a forbidden sealing formation to completely seal off the bronze coffin's aura. At this point, the blood-void beast seemed to have suddenly thought of something and hurriedly reminded him. By the way, the green cattail hassock that you obtained on the second floor of the treasury was also the one that fell from the bronze coffin. After hearing the blood-void beast's reminder to Yu Haoran, the Thaling, who was vaguely familiar with the aura of the bronze coffin, had a look of understanding in his eyes. Then, he took the initiative to leave the Sea of Consciousness. Thaling, it's dangerous. Don't go near it. Seeing that Thaling had suddenly left the Sea of Consciousness and was actually walking towards the bronze coffin, Yu Haoran's expression changed abruptly, and he hurriedly reminded him. However, in the face of Yu Haoran's reminder, Thaling did not stop in his tracks and only explained with a complicated expression. Yu Haoran, if the forbidden existence suppressed in the bronze coffin were to say that there were 3 people in this world that it would not harm easily, then I, Thaling, would definitely be one of them. Thaling, do you know who is suppressed in the bronze coffin? After hearing the Tower Genie's reminder, Yuhauran immediately realized that the tower genie definitely knew who the taboo existence suppressed in the bronze coffin was. Thaling did not answer Yuhauran's question for the time being. He strode towards the bronze coffin and directly placed his right hand on the coffin as he muttered softly to himself. "It's me, Supreme Violet Spirit." The sound of him hitting the bronze coffin suddenly stopped. "Are you all right?" After hearing Thaling's concerned question, the bronze coffin suddenly flew into the air and circled around Thaling 3 times before returning to its original position. "Don't worry, I will find a way to break the sealing formation of the bronze coffin and allow you to see the light of day again." Seeing that the bronze coffin had completely quieted down, Thaling's expression was solemn as he promised. Afterwards, Thaling turned his head and called out to Yuhauran. "Yuhauran, come here." When Yuhauran arrived beside him, Thaling pointed at the bronze coffin and instructed, "Use the innate divination technique of the Fushi 8 trigrams diagram and see if you can find the 3 magical powers within the sealing formation." "Alright." Yuhauran did not continue to ask about the forbidden existence suppressed in the bronze coffin, nor did he continue to ask about the relationship between Thaling and the other party. After nodding in response to Thaling's instructions, he stepped forward and stood in front of the bronze coffin. Due to the distance at the beginning and the sudden movement of the bronze coffin, he did not have the opportunity to carefully examine the bronze coffin. Chapter 1959. The third floor of the Blue Dragon clan's residence. The surface of the bronze coffin was engraved with countless stripes that resembled laws and rules. Yuhauran suddenly sensed that the mysteries of the laws of life and death that he comprehended, as well as the laws of strength that he comprehended, and the laws of spring, summer, autumn, and winter that he comprehended, suddenly began to boil uncontrollably. This uncontrollable boiling indicated that the laws of strength and the laws of spring, summer, autumn, and winter were about to advance to the profound realm. At the same time, it also meant that his comprehension of the laws of life and death was about to advance to the peak. Soon, he would possess the power of laws to break through to Autark. Apart from the countless patterns that could stimulate the laws and principles, the aura from the bronze coffin also contained a trace of special energy that was far superior to life essence. The blood-void beast standing on his shoulder couldn't help but squint its tiny eyes to absorb this sliver of special energy, and a look of enjoyment appeared on its face. Taking a deep breath, Yuhauran forcefully suppressed the urge to break through to the next level of the laws and principles, and dispelled the thought of continuing to observe. He extended his hands and pressed them on the bronze coffin. Afterwards, he slowly closed his eyes and used the divination technique of the Fushi 8 trigrams diagram to carefully sense the formula Tao energy within the sealing formation of the bronze coffin. Blood. Fiend. The spirit blood that seeped out from the sealing formation was as dense as the ocean. It made Yuhauran almost lose control of himself and transform into the body of an ancestral magus. Then, with the help of the great spirit blood, he could directly break into the level of a supreme ancestral magus. As the vast aura of blood surged out, a violent fiendish aura that was like that of an ancient beast almost crushed his mind. It almost caused his mental state to collapse and his cultivation to go down the drain. Fortunately, the impact of the aura of blood and fiendish aura directly activated the sealing formation within the bronze coffin. While the sealing formation successfully blocked the damage of the violent fiendish aura, it also allowed Yuhauran to successfully find 3 strands of spell energy within the sealing formation. One of the strands of pure spell energy was of the same origin as the Fushi 8 trigrams diagram that he cultivated. "Thaling, I've found the 3 sources of energy in the sealing formation." Yuhauran opened his eyes and reminded Thaling as he resisted the urge to absorb the energy from the same source. However, the masters of these 3 arts are all experts in the realm of formula Tao and technique divinity. Yuhauran, can you find a way to guide the energy of the 3 spells out of the sealing spell formation? Thaling asked nervously. Let me try. He could eliminate the energy of the same origin by absorbing and fusing it, but he was not sure if he could guide and eliminate the other two energies of the same level, so he did not boast to Thaling. Taking another deep breath, Yuhauran closed his eyes again. Then, he mobilized all the magic energy in his body and quietly fused it into the sealing formation. Little by little, it enveloped and devoured the magic energy of the same origin. In just 30 seconds, he had successfully advanced to minor success in the realm of Grandmaster. Less than 2 minutes later, he broke through to greater mastery again, from minor mastery to major mastery. Boom! Just as Yuhauran continued to devour the pure magic energy to improve his Formula Tao realm, a deafening explosion came from outside the treasury. Following the deafening explosion, the entire treasury began to shake violently. Violet Spirit, it seems that the riot at the beginning of the bronze coffin has attracted the attention of the experts of the Guardian families. They should be trying to break through the defenses of the third level of the treasury and find a way to strengthen the bronze coffin's seal. Sensing the violent shaking of the third level of the treasury, the Blood Void Beast, who was familiar with the Guardian families, immediately guessed why they were attacking the spatial barrier of the treasury. Blood Void, with your understanding of the Guardian family's strength, how long will it take for them to break through the spatial barrier of the third level of the treasury? After hearing the Blood Void Beast's reminder, Thaling glanced at Yuhauran, whose Formula Tao realm was still improving by leaps and bounds, and asked with a hint of hesitation in his eyes. 5 minutes at the most. After carefully measuring the strength of the Guardian families and the sturdiness of the spatial barrier of the third level of the treasury, the Blood Void Beast gave an approximate time. 5 minutes. After hearing the time given by the Blood Void Beast, the hesitation in Thaling's eyes was immediately replaced by determination. Then, he floated into the air and took out 81 low-grade God Realm formation flags from the victor. Then, his 10 fingers quickly formed a formation imprint, and together with the 81 formation flags, he set up a formation that could further increase the defensive power of the spatial barrier. After the 81 formation flags were integrated into the spatial barrier of the third level of the treasury, Thaling returned to the front of the bronze coffin. Then, he took out the corpses of the Half-Tribulation Supremes that he had collected in the Qing Hu mountain range from the victor's space and placed them around the bronze coffin. Violet Spirit, what are you trying to do? The Blood Void Beast could understand the action of using a formation to strengthen the spatial barrier of the treasury, but it could not understand why Thaling wanted to use the corpses of 18 Half-Tribulation Supremes. Blood Incineration Void Shattering Formation. Thaling replied to the Blood Void Beast's question as he quickly formed a formation imprint with his 10 fingers. Violet Spirit, tell me the truth. Who is the forbidden existence sealed in the bronze coffin? The Blood Void Beast's body trembled slightly as it asked in shock. The Blood Incineration Void Shattering Formation was a forbidden secret technique that could forcibly break through a formation. This was because in order to successfully set up the Blood Incineration Void Shattering Formation, it required all the essence of the flesh and blood of the top living beings. The power of the Blood Incineration Void Shattering Formation was related to the number and strength of the living beings used. The more living beings used and the stronger the living beings, the more powerful the Blood Incineration Void Shattering Formation would be. Therefore, ever since the Blood Incineration Void Shattering Formation was created and used by the primordial demon clan, countless top forces and powerful beings joined forces to determine that it was a forbidden formation that could never be set up. Violet Spirit was willing to break the iron rule that had been set since the primordial era to set up the Blood Incineration Soul Shattering Formation. This made the Blood Void Beast even more eager to know who the forbidden existence sealed in the bronze coffin was. Sigh. Thaling stopped forming imprints and looked up at the bronze coffin. He sighed softly and said with a complicated expression, the first disciple of the mysterious Taoist Guiguzi, the most powerful supreme being in the Middle Ages, the Xingtian Supreme who cultivated a forbidden mental cultivation method. Sizzle! The blood-void beast could not help but gasp when it heard Fowling point out the forbidden existence sealed in the bronze coffin. Its eyes were filled with horror as it spoke involuntarily. Chapter 1960. Inside the Blue Dragon clan's encampment, the third floor of the treasury, there was still the realm of Formula Emperor between Formula Tao Grandmaster and Formula Tao God. As a Formula Tao Grandmaster, forcefully absorbing the pure art energy left behind by a Formula Tao God could quickly raise one's own Formula Tao realm, but the process also contained great risk. For example, if one's own understanding of Formula Tao couldn't withstand the impact and fusion of art energy, it would lead to a backlash from Formula Tao. The consequences of a backlash from Formula Tao were countless times more severe than the backlash from other auxiliary cultivation paths and martial Tao. At this moment, Yu Haoran, who'd ascended to the limits of peak Grandmaster, was facing the danger of a backlash from Formula Tao. Taking a deep breath and doing his best to calm his panicked emotions, he began to consider how to resolve the crisis in front of him. Affected by the bronze coffin's sealing formation, he could no longer cut off the infiltration of art energy from the same origin. He could only think of a way to consume the energy within the formation to resolve the backlash. Although a breakthrough in Formula Tao was the best way to quickly consume large amounts of art energy, Yu Haoran wasn't too confident that he could grasp the understanding of Formula Tao and break through to the next realm in a short time. Driving and guiding art energy to further increase the power of the bronze coffin's sealing formation would also speed up the consumption of art energy, but it could easily provoke the resistance of the forbidden existence suppressed within the bronze coffin. It was no less dangerous than a backlash from Formula Tao. By using the energy of the same origin, he could use the innate divination technique of the Fuxi 8 trigrams diagram to deduce some things that he urgently needed to know. At the same time, it could also greatly consume the energy of the technique. This was the only way he could think of at the moment. After much consideration, he finally decided to use his breakthrough in Formula Tao and the divination of innate divination to resolve the crisis of Formula Tao backlash he was facing. Slowly exhaling a mouthful of turbid air that had accumulated in his chest, Yu Haoran jumped onto the bronze coffin and sat down cross-legged. Afterward, he took out a dozen or so Bodhi seeds that could be used to improve comprehension. Then, he used half of his energy to assist in comprehending and cultivating the technique Emperor realm. The other half was used to calculate the specific location of the remaining 29 chaos marks, as well as the whereabouts of his master, Feng Qingyun. This brat! The beast didn't know whether to laugh or cry when it saw Yu Haoran jump onto the coffin and begin cultivating Formula Tao. However, no matter what earth-shattering things Yu Haoran did now, it would not attract too much attention from the blood-void beast. After he calmed down, he thought about the possible consequences and disasters that might occur after Xingtian's supreme escape. Therefore, he needed to know if Fowling had any means to defend against Xingtian Supreme. If there was, then he would contribute his meager strength. If not, then he would do everything in his power to prevent Xingtian Supreme from escaping. Violet Spirit, are you sure that the taboo existence sealed in the bronze coffin is Xingtian Supreme, the first Supreme Master of the Middle Ages? I'm very sure. Fowling confirmed with a nod while continuing to use the condensed imprint to set up the blood-burning void-shattering formation. That's because Xingtian has already used a special spiritual mystic technique to respond to my greetings. Violet Spirit, can the blood-burning void-shattering formation set up by 18 half-tribulation Supreme Masters' corpses really break the seal in the bronze coffin? 50 to 100%. Fowling raised his head to look at Yu Haoran, who was sitting cross-legged on the bronze coffin, and said with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. If you, Howren, can remove the energy of the 3 spells in the seal, then the blood-burning void-shattering formation will be able to break the seal in the bronze coffin with a 100% success rate. Otherwise, the success rate will only be 50%. Ziling, if Xing Tian Xing breaks out of his seal, will you be able to completely suppress him? Or rather, will you be able to calm his bloodthirsty nature? Yes. Thaling nodded without hesitation and said with a hint of tenderness on his face. The world only knows that I've challenged Xingtian 3 times, but they don't know that each time I challenged Xingtian, he was able to break through the bottleneck and reach a higher realm. Especially the last challenge that caused Xingtian to be severely injured, it allowed him to reach the 1 tribulation immortal realm. Therefore, in Xingtian's heart, I'm no less important than his teacher, Gue Guzi. Therefore, I have the ability to suppress his violent and bloodthirsty impulses. If that's the case, I'll continue to think of ways to increase the defense of the 3rd level of the space barrier in the treasure vault and try to delay him for a while. Thaling's detailed answers to the previous questions completely dispelled the last bit of worry in the blood void beast's heart. At the same time, he also wanted to see the demeanor of the number 1 Supreme Master of the Middle Ages with his own eyes. Thank you. Thaling thanked the blood void beast with a complicated expression as he raised his head to look at it. On the 2nd level of the treasure vault. It seems that the thief who has sneaked into the 3rd level of the treasure vault is an expert who is proficient in formations. Hundreds of martial gods and half-tribulation supremes had joined forces to attack the space barrier for 5 minutes, but not only had they failed to break through the space barrier to the 3rd level of the treasure vault, but they also failed to leave even a small crack. The peak 3rd tribulation supremes of the Blue Dragon clan knew that someone had used a profound defensive formation to increase the defense of the 3rd level of the treasure vault. Moreover, he could roughly guess who had sneaked into the 3rd level of the treasure vault. Ancestor Ming Rue, hundreds of martial gods and half-tribulation supremes of the Sky Alliance have already broken through the defensive formation of the clan's residence and are now charging over. Just as the peak 3rd tribulation supremes of the Blue Dragon clan was thinking about how to break through the space barrier as soon as possible to prevent the forbidden existence in the bronze coffin from escaping, a martial god guarding the treasure vault rushed in with a panicked expression. Don't panic. After comforting him with a gentle expression, the middle-aged man called Ancestor Ming Rue frowned slightly and pondered for a while. Then, he turned his head and spoke to Bai Daoxian of the White Tiger clan and Zhu Ningqian of the Vermilion Bird clan. Daoxian, Ningqian, follow me to meet the leader of the Sky Alliance, Ji Xing. Sure. Knowing the purpose of Ao Mingrue's visit to Ji Xing, Bai Daoxian and Zhu Ningqian nodded in response. The 3 peak 3rd tribulation supreme experts quickly left the 1st and 2nd floors of the treasury. Finally, they met the hundreds of martial gods and half-tribulation supreme experts of the Heavenly Alliance at the entrance of the treasury. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.